The grand arched architecture of the academy stands tall against the bright sky. A towering clock overlooks the quiet sunlit courtyard of the royal grounds. Offering a popular city suite, a cheerful girl eagerly asks Lord Geoffrey to try her handmade treat. Suddenly, an enraged voice screams at them all. The girl gasps in shock as her beautifully wrapped gift is viciously swatted away. Lady Alexia stands haughtily before the cowering girls as they tremble in her presence. Glaring down at them, Alexia viciously demands how they dare present unchecked food to a member of the royal family. Stepping in with a cold stare, Prince Geoffrey tells Alexia she has no right to interfere with what he accepts. Staring her down, he harshly orders her to know her limits. He cruelly reminds her that she is merely one of many candidates to be his fiancée. The devastated girl stares up at Lord Geoffrey with tear-filled eyes. Fighting back tears to avoid showing weakness, Alexia formally apologizes for her improper interference. Without a backward glance, Geoffrey calls for Ian and begins to walk away. Ian follows silently behind the prince, leaving the stunned Alexia behind. The girls watch in silence as the prince and his aide disappear down the grand hallway. Sometime later, a deeply feverish Alexia collapses and experiences a strange revealing dream. Waking up in a sweat, she suddenly remembers her previous life as an office worker who freely enjoyed being single and eating desserts. Staring into her mirror, she realizes in sheer disbelief that she has awakened inside the reality of an otome game called Koyomi. Panic sets in as she recognizes herself as Alexia Rachette, the dreaded villainess of that very game. She recalls the game's lore dictating that a saintess with holy power must maintain the seal on a calamity-bringing demon. Furthermore, she remembers that the saintess heroine wins the target's hearts while the villainous Alexia hopelessly harasses her. Sweating nervously, she laments not reincarnating as a peaceful side character, knowing her current path leads straight to condemnation. Suddenly, she realizes it is far too early to surrender to her grim fate. Reasoning that the heroine hasn't even appeared yet, she concludes that distancing herself from Prince Geoffrey now will solve everything. With resolute determination, she decides to surrender her top fiancé candidate position and wholeheartedly enjoy the single life. Knowing the prince doesn't care about her anyway, she solidifies her plan to completely avoid all impending doom flags. Smiling confidently at her reflection, she vows to stay away from the love-obsessed main cast and instead show off her solo living skills. Breaking her train of thought, a concerned maid softly asks if she is feeling better. With a calm and gentle smile, Alexia replies she was just thinking and wasn't feeling bad to begin with. The maid dutifully begins to curl her lady's hair as Alexia prepares for her newly chosen path. Reflecting on her past, Alexia recalls how she meticulously tailored her hair and makeup solely to please Lord Geoffrey. Realizing the absurdity of her actions, she immediately declares there is no need for such ridiculous efforts today. She acknowledges that her immense dedication stemmed entirely from her genuine love for him. A wave of melancholy washes over her as she remembers he never even gave her a single glance. Empowered by her awakened past life memories, she happily realizes her old feelings of desperate longing have completely vanished. Mortified by her past villainous behavior, she cringes internally as her newly awakened, mature late-20s mindset replaces her unrequited sorrow with sheer embarrassment. Turning to her maid Marissa, an eager Alexia asks for the whereabouts of her father and brother. Upon hearing they are in the dining hall, she immediately resolves to rush over and officially withdraw her candidacy as the primary fiancé. Bursting into the elegant dining hall, she is warmly welcomed with a cheerful good morning from her family. Filled with concern, her father gently urges her not to push herself too hard so soon after her recovery. Echoing the sentiment, her caring brother insists she let them know the moment she feels fatigued. Heartened by her family's overwhelming kindness, Alexia smiles brightly and reassures them that she is fully healed. Hesitating slightly, she informs them of her immediate plan to take a week-long absence from the academy. She mentally agonizes over an impending social gathering, dreading the stressful marriage market where candidates flock to the crown prince. Surprised by her refusal, her brother questions her health, but Alexia adamantly insists she is fine while secretly refusing to attend the dreadful event. Steeling her nerves, a determined Alexia looks directly at her father and announces she has something important to discuss. She boldly drops a massive bombshell on the table, declaring her intention to permanently resign as the crown prince's fiancé candidate. Paralyzed by the sudden declaration, both her father and brother stare at her with wide, dumbfounded expressions. Leaping from his chair in a frantic panic, her father desperately demands to know what caused such a sudden change of heart. Fully understanding their profound shock over her sudden shift, Alexia maintains a calm smile as she prepares her explanation. She gently explains that her recent illness gave her the necessary time away from His Highness to thoroughly reconsider her life. With a heavy but honest sigh, she confesses that the relentless pursuit has simply left her entirely exhausted. Confronting the harsh reality, she points out that His Highness never truly wanted her as a fiancée in the first place. She firmly concludes that marrying into a loveless relationship bound only by the king's royal decree would never bring her true happiness. Shifting gears to her actual master plan, she passionately declares she would rather stay home and live happily with her beloved family. A cold sweat breaks out on her face as she suddenly remembers the inescapable reality of forced political marriages for a high-ranking ducal house. Grasping at straws, she nervously rationalizes that their family's immense wealth and political neutrality should easily protect her from an unwanted arrangement. Shattering her expectations, both men enthusiastically agree without hesitation and loudly declare she can live comfortably in the mansion forever. Stunned by their immediate approval, she tentatively questions if becoming a permanent resident might eventually ruin her brother's future marriage prospects. Furious at the very suggestion, her fiercely protective brother vows he would never marry any woman who dares to treat his sister coldly. Upset by her father's unfair decision, the young lady angrily declares that if Raymond brought home such a wife, she and Xia would immediately move to their own territory. Overjoyed by their unwavering support, she beams brightly and playfully accuses her family of spoiling her too much. Strolling through the elegant halls of her home, she silently wonders why her family accepted her sudden withdrawal so easily. Pondering her newfound freedom, she realizes that staying in her room constantly would be terribly boring and questions what she should do next. Her aimless wandering abruptly halts when she spots a mysterious double door and questions if that room had always been there. Staring curiously at the unfamiliar entrance, she tries to recall if it was added while she was bedridden with her fever. Driven by her nagging curiosity, she gently reaches out and grasps the ornate handle of the mysterious door. Stepping inside, she is immediately struck by the sight of a highly luxurious sword resting on a pedestal that seems completely out of place. Glancing around the surprisingly plain surroundings, she admits that the room itself is much more ordinary than she initially expected. Playfully mocking the dramatic setup, she jokes that it looks exactly like a sacred sword waiting for a chosen hero to pull it from its stone. Shock ripples across her face when she gives the hilt a casual tug and the blade effortlessly slides free. Startled by a sudden voice angrily demanding who she is calling a toy, she inspects the incredibly light weapon in her hands. Frantically looking left and right, she tries to locate the source of the disembodied voice echoing in the quiet room. The glowing blade vibrates intensely in her grip as it proudly proclaims itself to be the sacred sword she is currently holding. Utterly unamused by the magical revelation, she stares blankly at the sparkling weapon with a deeply unimpressed expression. The sentient blade desperately begs her not to ignore it as she begins to nonchalantly lower the weapon. Sensing massive impending trouble, her face darkens with dread as the sword hastily apologizes for being slow to respond after its long slumber. When the eager sword asks if they are going to hunt monsters and fight the Demon King together, she immediately shuts it down with a flat refusal. Flabbergasted, the sword demands to know why she drew it if she had no grand intentions, to which she casually admits it was just a whim. She blatantly offends the mystical weapon by admitting she thought it was a cheap toy because it felt so incredibly light. Realizing this legendary item belongs in a heroine's story, she firmly declares that a villainess like her wants absolutely nothing to do with such heroic nonsense. Ignoring its desperate promises that she could become a heroine, she ruthlessly begins shoving the screaming blade back into its scabbard. She forcefully rejects the sword's tempting offers of immense popularity and guaranteed victory, insisting she just wants to avoid trouble. Covering her ears and sprinting away, she childishly shouts that she cannot hear the weapon's frantic pleas for her to stay. Fleeing the room entirely, she loudly repeats her denial to completely block out the magical artifact's annoying voice. Having escaped into the bustling city streets, she finally stops to catch her breath and lets out a heavy sigh of exhaustion. Her sudden fatigue alarms her two loyal attendants who stare at her with deep concern as she tightly clutches her chest. One of her anxious guards immediately steps forward and gently suggests they return to the mansion if she is feeling unwell. Brushing off their worries, she insists she is fine and declares her intention to visit the library to make the most of her rare outing. Marching forward with renewed determination, she vows to bury herself in books just to erase the memory of that bothersome talking sword. A girl cheerfully suggests changing the mood by heading to the library. A bright-eyed girl gleefully celebrates the Duke's daughter's infinite allowance and her spectacular bulk-buying spree. Marissa and the maid watch in awe as the young lady purchases the best-selling romance novel to add to her towering stack of books. Holding her single chosen book, the lady generously tells Marissa she can read the massive pile of purchased novels once they are delivered. As the lady walks away with a satisfied smile, a bewildered Marissa stammers out a grateful thank you. Deciding their next move, the lady smoothly suggests they head to the cafe now. The reliable maid proudly declares she has already made a reservation at a wonderful place for them. Shocked by the maid's lightning-fast efficiency, the lady praises her as the perfect servant recommended by her father. Suddenly, a harsh voice rings out, causing the group to halt as the lady dramatically whips her long hair around. The guard immediately steps in front of the lady, urging her to stay back from the unfolding commotion. An arrogant nobleman furiously hoists a crying young boy by his collar while his desperate sister clings to him in terror. Observing the scene, Eric explains that the boy's sister accidentally spilled a drink on the furious man's outfit. Marissa notes with horror that even though the noble bumped into the children, his status prevents anyone from stepping in to help them. Taking in the grim reality, the lady grimly realizes that commoners opposing a noble could easily lose their lives. The enraged noble screams that a simple apology means nothing compared to his ruined, expensive clothes. Watching the cruel abuse of power, the lady grits her teeth as it painfully reminds her of her past self. Calling out to Eric, she frantically wrestles with her own cowardice, admitting she has no strong sense of justice and hates getting into trouble. She realizes with frustration that Eric is bound by duty and cannot abandon his post to help the children. Clutching her newly bought book to her chest, she looks down as a heavy sigh escapes her lips. Unable to bear the guilt of walking away, she firmly resolves to step in and save them. Marching forward with a determined scowl, she internally screams that acting like a hero is completely out of character for her. Approaching the arrogant man, she boldly insults him by asking why he doesn't just buy new clothes instead of fussing over his cheap ones. The nobleman turns in shock and glares at the audacious girl interrupting his punishment. Sneering at her, the noble viciously claims his ruined outfit is worth more than her entire life and mocks her own attire. Tilting her head in feigned confusion, the lady coolly asks if he truly believes that. She casually remarks that discussing the price of things is usually considered highly improper among true nobles. Stepping up behind her, Eric smoothly points out that the lady's dress is actually far more expensive than the nobleman's suit. The noble recoils in absolute disbelief, furiously shouting that her plain, worn-looking dress couldn't possibly be worth more than his. With a condescending smirk, the lady elegantly informs the flustered man that he clearly lacks a discerning eye for quality. While Eric sweats over her deliberate provocation, she proudly boasts that her outfit is an exclusive custom-made piece tailored by her family's private designer. Gesturing toward Alexia's unassuming but exquisitely tailored dress, her guard proudly explains that it is a one-of-a-kind masterpiece crafted from the finest materials to blend seamlessly with commoner attire. Cringing internally at the extravagant explanation, a flustered Alexia silently laments what a complete waste of effort her disguise turned out to be. Furious at the perceived disrespect, Baron Zoll angrily bellows that they are mocking him and demands they recognize his noble status. Feigning perfect ignorance with a polite smile, Marissa elegantly shuts him down while secretly knowing her own lineage from a count's family vastly outranks his lowly barony. Refusing to back down, the pompous baron arrogantly extends an invitation to his mansion, claiming the ignorant commoners need to see his wealth to believe his status. With a sleazy smirk, Zoll orders his thugs to force the two women into his carriage, boasting that they might even earn the honor of becoming his wife if they please him. The surrounding crowd whispers among themselves, mocking the baron's forced proposal by pointing out he is only single because no noblewoman would ever agree to marry him. Sensing the escalating danger, a vigilant Alexia immediately calls out to her loyal guard Eric to intervene. Stepping bravely in front of his lady, Eric takes a brutal punch to the stomach from a hulking thug who dismisses him as a weak pretty boy. Shrugging off the blow with astonishing ease, Eric firmly grabs the startled thug and prepares to retaliate. Watching Eric effortlessly overpower the massive thug, a relieved Alexia praises her guard's exceptional combat skills. Trembling as his hired muscle is easily defeated, a panicking Baron Zoll desperately threatens that their disrespect will not go unpunished. Silencing the foolish noble, Alexia's attendant boldly reveals that they serve the prestigious ducal house of Rochette. Stepping forward with an air of absolute authority, Marissa coldly informs the terrified Baron that he has just picked a fight with one of the most powerful families in the kingdom. Sweating profusely and shaking in his boots, a desperate Zol weakly accuses them of lying about their high-ranking identities. Staring him down with a chilling smile, Alexia reminds the trembling man of the severe legal consequences for falsely claiming the name of a reigning duke. Dismissing his stuttered excuses, Alexia confidently declares that she has thoroughly memorized his name and face for future retribution. Completely broken by the terrifying realization of his monumental mistake, Baron Zol collapses to his knees in a pitiful display of absolute despair. Looking down at the groveling noble with mock sympathy, Alexia playfully warns him about dirtying his clothes while he screams a desperate apology. Pathetically offering himself as a literal doormat, Zol begs her to step on him, but Alexia dismissively rejects the disgusting offer. Thoroughly creeped out by the Baron's sudden masochistic groveling, Alexia takes a step back in sheer bewilderment. Ignoring the pathetic nobleman entirely, Alexia gently turns her attention to the rescued children and permits them to leave the chaotic scene. Overflowing with immense gratitude, the tearful children enthusiastically thank their disguised savior before sprinting safely away from the plaza. The brief moment of peace is suddenly shattered when an opportunistic thief violently snatches Alexia's handbag and sprints through the crowded street. Startled by the brazen daylight robbery, the entire entourage gasps in collective shock as someone screams out for the thief. Remaining completely unbothered, Alexia calmly reasons that the custom bag is entirely empty since Marissa carries the funds, and any attempt to pawn it will immediately expose the thief. Before her guards can even react, a mysterious, dark-haired man suddenly leaps from the crowd and forcefully tackles the fleeing thief to the cobblestone. Handing the stolen purse over to the arriving authorities, the stoic young man receives a crisp salute and formal thanks for his swift intervention. Recognizing the familiar profile of the prince's personal aide, a completely dumbfounded Alexia internally screams Ian Caffrey's name. Staring in absolute horror at the one person she desperately wanted to avoid, Alexia nervously wonders why the crown prince's closest confidant is wandering the lower city instead of attending the academy. Observing the dark-haired man, she notes his default scowl and cold demeanor, recognizing him as one of the game's hard-to-read romanceable characters. When he holds out her bag, she internally swoons, realizing he was her favorite character in her previous life and looks even more handsome in reality. She politely thanks him, secretly panicking that he didn't recognize her because her hair and makeup are completely different today. Resolving to act like a naive noble lady, she decides it is best to avoid such gloomy, unfriendly people in the real world. She quickly declines his offer of a reward, planning to leave the interaction to Marissa and pretend to be a complete stranger. Her escape plan crumbles instantly when he unexpectedly addresses her as the daughter of Duke Rachette. Caught off guard, she formally greets Lord Caffrey and thanks him once more for retrieving her belongings. He admits his surprise, noting that she feels completely different today even though she really is Miss Rachette. Realizing she was exposed because her highly competent guard Eric was with her, she listens as Caffrey confesses he wouldn't have recognized her otherwise. He then bluntly questions what she is doing in a place like this. Glaring silently at him, she stubbornly wonders if she really needs to explain her actions to someone she isn't close to. Sensing her hostility, he quickly apologizes and admits he didn't mean to pry into her affairs. He clarifies that he was merely curious why she was out on the street looking so drastically different. Pleasantly surprised by his straightforward apology, she smiles warmly and explains she came out to buy books. Holding her books securely, she adds that she had planned to visit a cafe before the commotion happened, pointedly asking if his curiosity is now satisfied. He awkwardly apologizes again if he seems to force an answer from her, to which she gently agrees. Dropping her guard slightly, she politely reassures him and thanks him one last time for the bag. Suddenly terrified that rumors will spread if she is seen with such a popular man, she abruptly bids him goodbye and sprints away to protect her single life. Watching her retreating figure, Caffrey looks genuinely stunned, wondering if she was always someone who smiled so brightly when thanking others. Back in the safety of her lavish bedroom, she sighs heavily over the sheer bad luck of running into one of the romanceable characters. She frustratedly laments that she had been trying her absolute best to avoid anything related to the game's heroine. While she passionately explains her desire to avoid a complicated romance and her villainous condemnation ending, an unknown voice suddenly asks why she wants to avoid that. A talking black cat introduces itself as Fernando, the new form of the sacred sword, leaving her utterly shocked. The feline sword casually remarks that avoiding love is strange, writing her off as a deeply peculiar woman. When Fernando points out that everyone wants to be loved, she angrily snaps that she refuses to hear such things from a non-living object shaped like a cat. Unfazed, the cat proudly promises her a winner's life full of justice and universal popularity if she just stays with him. Glaring fiercely, she screams that as the villainess, she absolutely does not need that kind of pampered love. Staring at the creature in sheer disbelief, she slowly realizes this bizarre encounter is not a dream. She further confirms it is not a hallucination as the small black cat sits calmly before her. Tearing her hair out in frustration, she screams in agony as the smug cat continues to lounge happily on her bed even after she has slept and eaten. Pointing out her visible exhaustion since the morning, a voice sternly asks who she thinks is to blame for this situation. Sitting wearily on her bed next to a black cat, Alexia softly admits that there are other reasons for her fatigue. Her father sits with a serious expression, explaining that officially withdrawing from the Crown Prince's fiancé candidacy requires a personal confirmation. Looking slightly nervous, Alexia acknowledges this as her brother notes that securing a meeting with the king will also take a considerable amount of time. A heavy silence falls over the room as her brother looks down with a deeply disappointed expression. Suddenly breaking the tension, her brother enthusiastically invites Alexia to go on a date with him. Suggesting they change the mood, he cheerfully proposes a joint trip to the city since she had just gone there the day before. He excitedly promises to buy her anything she wants and treat her to as many sweets as she desires. Completely ignoring her hesitant response, he escalates his offer by suggesting they could even buy out an entire shop for her. Alexia flatly shuts down the idea by warning him that buying a whole shop would massively inconvenience others, while the black cat internally notes that her brother's misdirected excitement is genuinely frightening. The cat's sweat drops in exasperation, silently observing that the brother's affection for Alexia is overwhelmingly heavy. Later, as Alexia announces her departure for the academy, the cat eagerly volunteers to accompany her, arguing that his feline form won't cause any issues. Alexia firmly rejects his request, pointing out that bringing a pet to the academy would attract far too much unwanted attention. She adds with a dismissive wave that she has absolutely no desire to be caught holding a conversation with an animal. Unfazed by her rejection, the mysterious entity muses that he can simply transform into something else instead. Startled by this revelation, Alexia asks if he can turn into things other than a sword or a cat, to which he smugly confirms his versatile abilities. Drooping slightly, the entity admits that his current lack of magical energy prevents him from returning to his true human form. Staring at the little black feline in pure shock, Alexia questions if he actually used to be human. The cat puffs out his chest defensively, boasting that his human body is tall and exceptionally handsome, warning her not to be surprised when he finally transforms. Waving him off with a patronizing smile, Alexia casually states she doesn't care what form he takes as long as he stays under the radar. Pointing a strict finger at him, she lays down her final rule, ordering him to keep quiet when they are out in public. Arriving at the academy, Alexia is immediately swarmed by anxious girls who hand over missed notes and express their deep concern for her health. Placing a hand over her heart, she offers them a polite, practiced smile and thanks them all for their consideration. Observing her peers take their seats, she silently acknowledges that these girls are not her friends, but cautious rivals and opportunistic attendants vying for royal favor. Sitting alone in deep thought, she cringes as she reflects on her past actions, realizing that her constant, high-status pursuit of Prince Geoffrey was nothing short of delusional obsession. She berates herself for completely ignoring the prince's actual feelings while arrogantly assuming she was guaranteed to become his bride. Marching down the quiet corridor, she admits that her family's massive influence forced the prince to tolerate her behavior, even though he likely found her utterly repulsive. Accepting his hatred as a natural consequence, she desperately hopes her formal request for an audience to break off the engagement is approved as soon as possible. Staring out the window with a melancholic gaze, she clarifies to herself that withdrawing isn't a ploy to win him over, but a genuine desire to escape the plot and live in peace. With a soft sigh, the reformed Villainess reaffirms that a quiet, drama-free life is the only thing she truly wants anymore. Returning to the Grand Academy, an establishing shot highlights the sprawling, multi-tiered architecture of the school courtyard. Carrying her missed assignments and a stylish bag, a cheerful Alexia plans to reward herself with a sweet treat once she gets back. Her peaceful exit is suddenly interrupted by a frantic classmate who demands to know if she is already leaving the academy. Ignoring the girl entirely, Alexia quietly snaps at her hidden companion Fernando to stay silent as he casually agrees. She strides purposefully down the grand stone hallway, intent on making a quick and quiet getaway. Her plans for a clean exit shatter when she unexpectedly crosses paths with Lord Geoffrey, forcing her to internally marvel at his handsome face despite her best efforts. Trapped by his sudden appearance, she is forced to pause as Geoffrey formally wishes her a pleasant day. Staring at her with an unreadable expression, the prince politely inquires if she has fully recovered from her recent illness. Maintaining a respectful distance, Alexia confirms her recovery and explains that is why she returned to the academy today. Unimpressed by her polite response, Geoffrey offers a brief and non-committal acknowledgement. Realizing he only spoke out of basic social obligation, Alexia mentally resolves to cut the awkward conversation short. A heavy silence falls between them as she endures the prince's piercing, cold gaze. Steeling her resolve, she reminds herself of her strict vow to stop acting selfishly and keep her distance from him forever. Shattering her fragile peace, Geoffrey coldly accuses her of faking her illness just to desperately grab his attention. Startled by the sheer audacity of the insult, Alexia flinches as a flare of genuine anger rises in her chest. Dropping her polite facade for a split second, she fiercely rejects his unacceptable accusation of feigning sickness. Quickly catching her slip before she loses her temper completely, she forces out a hasty excuse and abruptly takes her leave. Walking away briskly, she mentally reinforces her strategy to avoid causing any further trouble or misunderstandings. Despite knowing she is cast as the villainess, a frustrated Alexia vows she will never again grovel or accept false accusations from the arrogant prince. Storming down the corridor, she desperately shushes Fernando as the hidden entity tries to speak up. Fernando teases her for wanting him to just silently watch, while Alexia panics that she looks crazy talking to herself in public. Stepping outside into the sunlight, she pauses by a grand pillar and impatiently notices her carriage has not yet arrived. Seizing the quiet moment, Fernando softly requests permission to speak to his master. Glancing around to ensure they are alone, an exhausted Alexia grants him permission to whisper secretly. She marvels at her companion's impressive magic, praising Fernando for flawlessly disguising himself as a highly fashionable bracelet on her wrist. Fernando playfully observes that she truly is a high-society noble lady, given how many students constantly try to flatter her. Her expression darkening, Alexia dismissively categorizes her so-called admirers as nothing more than an annoying, superficial entourage. Staring out at the empty driveway, she frankly admits she wants to get rid of them so she can finally enjoy some peace and quiet. Utterly baffled by her mindset, Fernando points out that her entourage constantly pampers and cares for her every need. With a solemn and mature gaze, Alexia softly declares that empty flattery from fake friends will never bring her true happiness. Reflecting on the rigid social hierarchy, she rationalizes that it is only natural to become arrogant when everyone constantly caters to her every whim to avoid upsetting her. While the other girls swoon over the arrival of Ian Caffrey, he approaches Alexia directly and formally requests a moment to speak with her. Panicking internally, she desperately wishes she could just refuse his request right then and there. Forcing a polite smile while surrounded by his adoring fans, she gracefully asks what he wants while internally lamenting her inability to just reject him. She glares at him with hidden frustration, wishing the handsome young man would realize the massive amount of unwanted attention his sparkling aura is drawing. Taking control of the situation, she firmly states that they cannot talk calmly in such a crowded place and insists she wants to avoid any baseless rumors. Agreeing that the commotion is troublesome, Ian smoothly suggests they change locations for their chat. Resigning herself to the inevitable, she reluctantly agrees to his proposal while muttering that it cannot be helped. Relocating to a quieter spot outside the Grand Academy building, he gently calls out her name. He surprises her by revealing that he recognized her immediately today simply by looking at her hairstyle. Startled and slightly unsettled, she wonders if it is actually a good thing that he pays such close attention to her curled hair strands. Regaining her composure, she elegantly prompts him to explain his true reason for pulling her aside. Reaching into his pocket, he presents a familiar handkerchief, prompting her to realize it is the very same one she lost during her recent trip to the city. She gratefully claims the lost item and thanks him for returning it. Her gratitude quickly shifts to confusion as she points out that he easily could have returned the handkerchief to her much earlier. Rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly, he apologizes and explains he had been in disguise that day, so he thought it best not to bring up the incident. Observing his considerate reasoning about protecting her privacy, she is taken aback by his unexpectedly gentle and naive nature. She blushes slightly, internally protesting that combining his cold, handsome looks with such a sweet, naive personality is completely unfair. Charmed by his true personality, she silently cheers for him and hopes the game's heroine eventually chooses him. Breaking her train of thought, his expression turns serious as he asks if he can question her about something else. Standing tall and keeping her guard up, she grants him permission to speak but warns she will only answer what she can. He gazes at her with intense, calculating eyes, assuring her that she does not need to answer if the topic is too difficult. Confronting her directly, he admits his curiosity regarding her unusually cold attitude toward Prince Geoffrey and asks if her feelings for him have changed. She confirms his suspicion with a calm nod, secretly alarmed that he must have witnessed her tense encounter with the prince in the hallway. Maintaining her composed facade, she simply states that she has reconsidered her priorities. Striking a dramatic, confident pose, she proudly declares that instead of desperately chasing after a man's affection, she would rather be the one being chased. Leaning into her villainous persona, she proclaims that being worshipped and served by a perfect man is the only dynamic that truly suits her. Ian looks momentarily stunned by her bold declaration before softly acknowledging her words. She smirks triumphantly to herself, completely certain that her arrogant, prideful speech has successfully convinced him to back off. While he sincerely hopes she finds the subservient man of her dreams, she aggressively screams in her mind that she actually wants absolutely nothing to do with romance. Laughing haughtily, Alexia declares that dealing with someone so romantically aggressive would be incredibly annoying. She firmly resolves that she would immediately reject anyone who dared to cause her such ridiculous trouble. Retreating to her grand bedroom, she flops down on the mattress and lets out an exhausted sigh. Seeking comfort, she demands to hug the black cat to relax, though he instantly and stubbornly refuses her request. Ignoring his defensive posture, she swiftly reaches out and snatches the startled feline into the air. As she forcefully pulls him into a tight embrace, the frantic cat screams that he is actually a grown man. The struggling feline lets out a dramatic screech as she happily squishes her face against his soft fur. Cuddling the cat, she admits she finds Prince Geoffrey and Ian visually appealing but swears she will never get close to their troublesome drama. Trapped in her fierce embrace, the traumatized cat tearfully whimpers a desperate reminder about his true adult identity. She excitedly realizes that since this is an Otome game world, she desperately wants to witness the heroine's romantic events with the other male leads. Noting that the heroine hasn't even appeared yet, she contemplates attending an upcoming social gathering just to satisfy her burning curiosity. Wondering if her growing past life memories are driving these desires, she decides to delay her final choice about the party until the last possible second. Meanwhile, Ian presents a dropped item to Prince Geoffrey and gently suggests he try facing Alexia properly at least once. Leaning against his desk, Geoffrey remarks that it is highly unusual for Ian to encourage interacting with someone so complicated. Unfazed by the prince's cold demeanor, Ian thoughtfully proposes that the Duke's daughter might not actually be what they always assumed. The Crown Prince falls into a heavy silence, his expression hardening as he carefully processes his aide's unexpected perspective. Staring out the window, Geoffrey resolves to use the upcoming social gathering to finally determine if his harsh opinion of her should change. The grand clock tower of the Royal Academy casts long shadows over the pristine courtyard as another quiet morning begins. Walking through the halls, Alexia reflects on the recent days and accepts that her past life mindset has completely taken over her current reality. She cautions herself to act her current age, realizing her inner thoughts are dangerously mirroring those of an exhausted woman in her late 20s. Despite her firm vow to completely avoid approaching Lord Geoffrey on her own, a lingering sense of unease continues to bother her. Flashing a confident smile, she playfully taps the tiny black cat perched on her shoulder as she marches forward through the academy. Pacing the checkered floor of the corridor, she agonizingly debates whether or not she should actually attend the impending social gathering. Clenching her fists in frustration, she whines about her conflicting desires to eat delicious party sweets and ogle the handsome game characters in real life. Seeking a quiet distraction from her intense internal struggle, she decides to redirect her path toward the academy library. The cat casually agrees that browsing books is a perfectly reasonable way to pass the time before her carriage arrives to pick her up. Annoyed by his nagging, she harshly shushes the feline and demands he keep his voice completely silent while they wander the halls. Entering the library, She freezes in utter bewilderment as every student inside immediately stops moving and stares at her in shock. Glancing at a nervously sweating girl clutching a book, Alexia internally questions the incredibly tense and suffocating atmosphere filling the room. Realizing that the terrified students are actively shrinking away from her, she finally understands that everyone is deliberately avoiding her presence. Wondering if she should just enjoy the quiet, Alexia internally questions if her previous entourage actually hates her. Scanning the quiet library, she spots a timid girl and vaguely recognizes her as a classmate. Approaching the desk with a gentle demeanor, she softly asks the girl if something is wrong. Startled by the sudden intrusion, the frightened student violently flinches and knocks into her desk. Amused by the sheer panic, Alexia laughs that such a dramatic reaction makes her feel like a ghost. Putting the girl at ease, she introduces herself and asks the Count's daughter, Ariana Bright, to call her by her first name. Still completely flustered by the interaction, Ariana practically begs to be on a first-name basis as well. Ariana mentally spirals in pure shock, unable to believe that someone of such high status even knows she exists. Finding the timid girl as adorable as a small animal, Alexia silently hopes they can break past noble formalities and become true friends. Leaning in close to whisper, Alexia asks her new companion if the library is always this crowded. Blushing nervously, Ariana theorizes that the impending exams are driving everyone to study. Realizing the summer tests are right around the corner, Alexia playfully asks if Ariana is cramming too. Ariana bashfully admits she sought refuge in the library because her many siblings make studying at home impossible. Realizing she is being a major distraction, a guilty Alexia quickly apologizes for interrupting her focus. Shaking her head, Ariana confesses she had already given up on her homework because the material was too difficult. Stepping up to the plate, Alexia smoothly offers to tutor the struggling girl herself. Smiling warmly, Alexia gives her an out by suggesting she can wait for the professor if she prefers. Dropping all hesitation, an incredibly grateful Ariana immediately accepts the generous tutoring offer. Pulling up a chair beside her new friend, Alexia patiently guides Ariana through the complex academic material. Glowing with admiration, Ariana praises the incredibly clear explanation and marvels at Alexia's top-tier intellect. Utterly charmed by the girl's cute enthusiasm, Alexia gladly agrees to hold future study sessions. Mentally vowing to close the distance slowly without scaring her off, Alexia promises she is always happy to help. Meeting up by the Grand Academy Architecture the next day, their peaceful plans are shattered by an angry shout. A furious noblewoman aggressively confronts Ariana, demanding to know why she is stealing Alexia's precious time. Alexia coldly recognizes the hostile intruder as Jenny Scott, a high-ranking marquis's daughter and rival fiancé candidate. Stepping protectively in front of a cowering Ariana, Alexia firmly declares that her friend is not at fault. Refusing to back down, Jenny stubbornly insists the lowly count's daughter is dragging down Alexia's academic supremacy. Shocking her former lackey, Alexia casually announces she has completely abandoned her obsessive race for the top academic rank. Leveraging her recent illness as an excuse, she shudders at the very thought of pushing herself to the breaking point again. Flashing a serene and confident smile, Alexia proudly declares she is embracing moderation to live a peaceful life from now on. A tense silence hangs in the air as the girl quietly acknowledges the situation. A bead of sweat rolls down her cheek as she nervously considers her next words. Breaking the tension, one of the girls admits she has been deeply worried ever since Alexia collapsed. The girl respectfully bows her head, apologizing for speaking rudely without understanding Alexia's true situation. Observing the apology, Alexia silently notes that the girl seems much more downcast than her expected cold persona. The dark-haired girl looks up with wide, surprised eyes, clearly caught off guard by the interaction. Smiling warmly, Alexia graciously invites Miss Jenny to join them for a study session. The other girl enthusiastically supports the idea, eagerly suggesting they begin studying together that very day. Taking the lead, Alexia proposes they make use of the private salon in her residence for their gathering. Jenny touches her lips in quiet astonishment while Alexia internally observes her curious reactions. Flushing with pure excitement, Jenny eagerly accepts the invitation simply because Lady Alexia asked her. Completely overwhelmed by Jenny's sheer cuteness, Alexia happily directs the group toward the salon. The grand, elegant arched windows of the Academy's private salon bathe the room in natural light. A lavish spread of tea and delicate geometric sweets sits on the table as a nervous voice questions if she truly belongs there. Alexia calmly reassures Miss Ariana, explaining that the salon is the perfect place to safely enjoy tea and study in peace. Sipping her tea with refined grace, Alexia notes that these private academy rooms are strictly reserved for royalty and ducal houses. She clarifies that lower-ranking nobles and commoners are only granted access if they receive a direct invitation. Alexia grimly recalls the game's original plot where Prince Geoffrey's exclusive invitations to the heroine slowly push the villainess into a corner. Brushing off the dark thoughts, Alexia rejoices in the absolute perfection of eating sweets with two beautiful girls while blatantly ignoring her magical cat's demands for food. The peaceful atmosphere shifts when Ariana casually brings up the rapidly approaching social gathering. Maintaining a polite smile, Alexia softly admits that she is planning to skip the event entirely. Ariana droops with visible disappointment, admitting she had hoped they could share tea and sweets there too, which instantly pierces Alexia's heart with its pure cuteness. Torn between her adorable friends, the promise of sweets, and her own nagging curiosity, Alexia desperately tries to convince herself she doesn't want to attend. She repeatedly chants that curiosity killed the cat in a frantic internal bid to suppress her urge to go. Despite knowing it is a terrible idea, a sweating Alexia finds herself fully dressed and attending the bustling social gathering. She immediately zeroes in on the lavish buffet, admitting she absolutely cannot resist the royal pastry chef's delicious treats while Fernando the cat begs for a bite. Standing elegantly before the feast, she silently reflects that the original Villainess should have just focused on eating instead of causing drama. Staring at the grand spread, she laments what a massive waste it is to ignore such incredible food. Her dessert-focused thoughts are abruptly interrupted by a loud, collective gasp echoing across the room. Glancing over, she spots Prince Geoffrey completely surrounded by a flock of adoring girls begging him to tutor them. Looking at the nearby prince, a concerned Jenny asks if Alexia wants to speak with Lord Geoffrey, though Alexia privately worries her withdrawal has only invited more rivals. Deflecting the tension, Alexia smoothly offers her friend a plate of pastries and cheerfully declares she came solely to eat and chat. Taking a delicate bite, Jenny blushes brightly as she hums in sheer delight at the taste. Smiling warmly, Alexia notes it would be rude to ignore the prepared treats while secretly kicking herself for never trying them before. The delicious dessert prompts a delighted squeal from the happy girl. Scanning the elegant room, Alexia spots the game's prestigious romance targets, including the sons of the royal mage and knight commander. Suddenly, a jarring sight completely derails her relaxed observation. She stares in utter bewilderment, wondering why the stoic aide Ian Caffrey is attending the event. Panic grips her as she desperately remembers that this was supposed to be his very first time appearing at a social gathering. Breaking her train of thought, a highly anxious Jenny nervously calls out her lady's name. The timid girl quietly points out that Lord Geoffrey is staring directly at their table. Sweating under the crown prince's intense gaze, Alexia mentally defends herself by insisting she has actively avoided his line of sight. She nervously wonders if her sudden lack of annoying clinginess has inadvertently triggered his deep suspicion. Paranoia takes over as she frantically questions if eating so ferociously without noble restraint has made him wary of her. Suddenly, a stern and demanding voice calls out her family name. Gary Stock, the irate vice president of the student council, marches up and aggressively accuses her of abandoning the council room. Glaring down at the seated girls, he arrogantly orders Alexia to quickly finish the massive backlog of accumulated paperwork. Instead of cowering, Alexia closes her eyes and lets out a soft, amused breath. Flashing a brilliantly dismissive smile, she flatly refuses his demand and smoothly claims she must help her friend review for an exam. Staring him down with piercing eyes, she ruthlessly exposes that he only pushed his own responsibilities onto her because she used to blindly do anything to stay near Geoffrey. A flabbergasted Gary furiously demands if she truly believes studying with friends is more important than her sacred council duties. Unfazed by his anger, Alexia calmly reminds him that she isn't even a council member while a worried Jenny watches the confrontation. Jenny murmurs her lady's name in awe as the vice president stands completely stunned by the sharp rejection. With a fierce and unwavering glare, Alexia coldly informs him that helping someone she considers worthless brings her absolutely zero benefit. An enraged Gary threatens to withhold her recommendation for next year, prompting Alexia to casually tell him to do whatever he pleases. Sweating in desperation, he screams and asks if she is really willing to throw away all the grueling effort she has contributed so far. She icily corrects his delusion, declaring she only ever did the paperwork to prevent others from suffering under his gross incompetence. As the panicked vice president desperately tries to guilt her into doing his job, she brutally shuts him down and confirms his rumored arrogance. Smiling with a terrifying, elegant grace, the proud Villainess happily embraces her haughty reputation and declares she will only help those she personally chooses. With a final dismissive wave, she mercilessly orders the shell-shocked boy to handle his own workload from now on. Glaring furiously, a flustered senior student shouts at Ian and demands to know if he is insolently defying a direct order. Observing the escalating argument, Alexia remains perfectly silent with a cold and calculating gaze. Stepping forward smoothly, she warns the arrogant senior that his academy authority means nothing after graduation and he should change his mindset. She firmly declares with unwavering confidence that she has absolutely no intention of ever leaving the protection of her ducal family. Sweating profusely under her intense gaze, the intimidated senior nervously accuses her of using her high status as a threat. Smiling dismissively, Alexia casually brushes off the accusation as a misunderstanding and claims she is merely responding in kind. The tense standoff is abruptly interrupted when a stern Ian Caffrey steps in and demands to know the cause of the noise. Noting the gathered crowd, Ian coldly points out the presence of several witnesses and decides to make his stance perfectly clear. Staring straight ahead, Alexia seizes the moment to firmly announce she has absolutely no intention of joining the student council. Swishing her elegant dress, she dramatically begs them not to even nominate her so she avoids getting stuck with the unwanted responsibility. Flashing a subtle smile, she internally reaffirms her ultimate master plan to simply blend in as an ordinary, unbothersome villainess. Looking directly at Ian with a serious expression, she frankly admits that she wants absolutely nothing to do with complicated human relationships. Shocked by her blunt and unapologetic refusal, the surrounding students gasp and ask if she is truly serious about rejecting the prestigious position. Refusing to back down, Alexia confidently confirms that she is completely serious about her decision to step away. Taking control of the situation, Ian calmly advises the frustrated seniors to stop forcing the issue and leave her alone. Clicking his tongue in bitter defeat, the humiliated senior abruptly excuses himself and angrily storms away from the gathering. Watching the annoying student retreat, Alexia lets out an exhausted sigh and mentally laments how truly troublesome human relationships can be. Turning her attention back to her savior, she politely thanks Ian for his timely intervention while he humbly insists it was unnecessary. Looking at her with sudden sincerity, Ian praises her hidden efforts and admits she has been doing an excellent job regardless of her true intentions. Wide-eyed and completely caught off guard, a flushed Alexia stammers in pure shock that someone actually noticed her hard work. A warm blush spreads across her cheeks as she shyly confesses to herself that his unexpected acknowledgement makes her genuinely happy. Quickly changing the subject to hide her embarrassment, she cheerfully praises the delicious sweets and notes how rare it is to see Ian at a social gathering. Smiling brightly, she warmly encourages the typically stoic aide to drop his guard and actually enjoy the treats since he is already there. Softening his usual cold exterior, Ian surprises her by offering a remarkably gentle smile and agreeing to take her advice. Utterly captivated by the unexpected expression, Alexia internally swoons over the devastating impact of the cool and handsome aide's rare smile. She silently marvels at his striking charm, feeling a sudden flutter in her chest from the sheer force of his surprisingly warm demeanor. Her pleasant distraction is abruptly shattered when she catches sight of Lord Geoffrey watching them intensely from across the room. Unaware of the prince's gaze, Ian formally bids Miss Rachette farewell and promises to see her back at the academy. Looking over her shoulder, Alexia feels a spike of anxiety as she realizes the crown prince is still staring directly at her. Peeking nervously from behind a curtain with her maid, a deeply perplexed Alexia wonders why His Highness is suddenly paying so much attention to her. A group of excited girls excitedly clamor around someone, eagerly begging for a chance to try the cake. A young girl forcefully shushes her peers with a commanding gesture, promising to ask if they can take some outside if they just stay quiet. Ignoring the chaotic commotion behind her, Alexia walks away with a grim expression, internally resolving to quickly cancel her nomination as a potential fiancé. Inside a quiet office, a hand purposefully taps twice on a wooden desk. Prince Geoffrey stands attentively in the office holding a book, looking slightly surprised and somewhat tense. Realizing he interrupted President Herbert's work, Jeffrey hastily apologizes to the older man seated behind the grand desk. Herbert graciously dismisses the apology, blaming his own lack of focus and pointing out that he was the one who assigned the task in the first place. Leaning back with a relaxed smile, the president gently advises the tense prince to stop being so terribly serious and try to loosen up. He warns Jeffrey that as the future student council president, he will be utterly crushed by the pressure if he doesn't learn to handle things more casually. Seizing the opportunity, Jeffrey playfully asks if he can take the relaxed older man as a role model. Herbert responds with an amused, helpless shrug, clearly entertained by the younger man's quick wit. Changing the subject entirely, Herbert casually mentions that he hasn't seen Miss Rachette lately and wonders if something happened to her. Pausing to collect his thoughts, the older man crosses his arms and stares intently into the distance. Catching Jeffrey completely off guard, Herbert bluntly asks if the prince actually knows what Miss Rachette likes. Jeffrey freezes, sweat beading on his face as he desperately struggles to formulate a coherent response to the completely unexpected question. Herbert bursts into loud laughter at the prince's panicked silence before rapidly composing himself and apologizing for his sudden outburst. Regaining his serious composure, Herbert confirms his suspicion that Jeffrey is fully aware of Alexia's deep feelings for him. He thoughtfully points out that she has abruptly changed her usual aggressive approach and entirely stopped showing up to see him. Leaning back confidently, Herbert bluntly declares that he simply cannot afford to lose someone as highly capable and incredibly useful as Alexia. Narrowing his eyes with deep suspicion, Jeffrey quietly demands to know exactly what the older man is planning. Smiling mischievously, Herbert ignores the accusation regarding his own fiancée and admits he just wanted to find a bribe to catch Alexia's interest. Observing the prince's incredibly dark glare, Herbert calmly asks if his innocent question caused some sort of strange misunderstanding. He casually rationalizes that having a highly personalized bribe would make any future negotiations with the capable girl go much more smoothly. When Herbert asks why he doesn't just consult her incredibly cute brother, Jeffrey flatly admits that he simply doesn't know what she likes. A dark aura surrounds the prince as he grimly explains that Raymond's massive overprotectiveness means he would absolutely never share such valuable information. Surprised by the sheer intensity of the brother's obsession, Herbert lets out a quiet sigh of disbelief. Staring intensely at his junior, Herbert coldly questions how someone as smart as Jeffrey could be so completely clueless about the preferences of his top engagement candidate. Staring out the window with a soft smile, Herbert gently asks if Alexia isn't obviously the best possible option for him. A complex shadow falls over Jeffrey's face as he quietly admits that he already knows that absolute truth. With a weary sigh, the prince concedes that despite her overwhelmingly strong pressure, she is undeniably capable of handling the heavy position. Recalling a recent conversation, Prince Jeffrey wonders if he should try getting closer to the misunderstood Villainess. He reflects that his aide Ian had suggested the exact same approach just the day before. Chuckling softly, Ian realizes the prince has finally caught on to his subtle hints. Suddenly, an exhausted Gary bursts into the student council room and apologizes for his tardiness. Ian greets the flustered vice president with a calm and collected demeanor. Observing the massive pile of documents, Ian kindly offers to help Gary finish his overwhelming workload. Sweating nervously, Gary stubbornly insists that he can handle the paperwork completely on his own. Backing off with a gentle warning, Ian advises the stressed boy not to overwork himself. Meanwhile, back at the social gathering, the noble girls happily praise the incredible taste of Alexia's special sweets. Chewing thoughtfully, one of the girls admits she cannot figure out what the delicious treat is actually made of. Smiling proudly, Alexia reveals that her family's master chef managed to sneak vegetables into the exquisite dessert. Internally, she celebrates her brilliant strategy to ease her intense guilt after spending days binge-eating sugary snacks. She cheerfully reflects on using her villainous authority to force the kitchen staff to invent healthy pastries. The beautifully baked carrot and pumpkin cupcakes sit temptingly on the elegant table. She laments that while she wanted to bake them herself, her current high-ranking status makes it utterly impossible. She notes with amusement that since vegetable-based sweets don't exist in this world, her revolutionary idea completely shocked the royal bakers. Interrupting her thoughts, Stefano Galassi suddenly appears and smoothly comments on her delicious-looking food. Alexia immediately recognizes the handsome newcomer as one of the game's approachable target characters. Staring hungrily at the pastry, Stefano playfully complains that she should be offering him a bite instead of just enjoying it herself. Flashing a wicked smirk, Alexia teasingly asks why she would ever do something so generous for him. Breaking the tension, she softly relents and offers the eager knight a freshly baked cupcake. Stefano's face lights up with pure joy as he happily accepts the unexpected gift. Handing over a massive piece, she cheerfully admits she was originally planning to hoard it all for herself. Taking a huge bite, the young knight enthusiastically thanks her and praises the incredible flavor. Watching him eat, a mischievous glint flashes in the villainess's calculating eyes. With a sinister chuckle, she suddenly claims that the cake is secretly spiked with a highly suspicious ingredient. She sternly lectures the startled boy, warning him that high-ranking nobles should never carelessly eat unchecked food. Leaning in closely, she whispers that the sweet treat could easily contain a dangerous love potion. Staring at her intensely, Stefano falls into a heavy, dramatic silence as he processes her chilling words. Breaking the tension with a bright laugh, he casually brushes off the threat, confidently declaring that she clearly has zero romantic interest in him anyway. Feeling slighted by her bluntness, he dramatically complains that her words are far too harsh and begs her to at least try denying the situation. Suddenly freezing in her tracks, a wide-eyed Alexia gasps as a shocking realization abruptly crosses her mind. Frantically searching her past life memories, she remembers a specific game event where the heroine was supposed to taste those exact sweets. Staring in horror as the handsome Isekai'd happily licks his lips, Alexia panics over the terrifying possibility that she just accidentally derailed a major future plotline. Quickly brushing off her mounting anxiety, she cheerfully decides that if the young man wants to enjoy the treats, she should just let him. Pointing toward the basket of baked goods, she proudly explains that the muffins contain a highly unusual and healthy secret ingredient of mixed vegetables. Completely caught off guard by the bizarre culinary revelation, her companions stare at the basket and stammer out in utter disbelief. Overjoyed by the delicious taste, the eager maids excitedly marvel at how amazing it is to actually enjoy eating healthy vegetables. Hearing about the legendary pastry chef, an eager guard excitedly asks if he can eat those incredible meals by joining the Rochette family's personal night order. Gently rejecting the enthusiastic request, another knight warns that poaching a promising candidate like Sir Gallas would undoubtedly incur the royal palace's wrath. Sweating profusely, a stressed Alexia internally screams that recruiting him might accidentally trigger a forced political marriage into the royal family to smooth things over. Dropping his playful demeanor, the earnest young knight confesses he is entirely serious about wanting to train under the legendary Duke Saverio. Listening to his passionate declaration, Alexia offers a soft, thoughtful smile as she carefully ponders the knight's surprising dedication. Leaning forward to sweeten the deal, she promises to share more treats in the future but playfully warns him not to blame her if scandalous rumors begin to spread. Glancing down at the smirking noblewoman, a skeptical Ian points to himself and questions who would ever believe a rumor about the two of them. Flashing a brilliant smile, Alexia cheerfully jokes that people will simply think she is bribing the prince's aide to win favor, which Ian immediately dismisses as impossible. Letting out an exhausted but distinctly impressed sigh, Ian mutters under his breath that the unpredictable Duchess is truly something else. Getting straight to the point, the pragmatic aide leans in and asks exactly what she expects to receive in exchange for her continued culinary bribes. Tapping her chin thoughtfully, a mischievous glint flashes in Alexia's eyes as she dramatically pauses to consider her options. Leaning in close, she boldly asks if he will abandon the prince to become her personal servant, causing the usually stoic aide to shout in pure shock. Breaking the tension with a light-hearted laugh, Alexia waves her hand dismissively and assures the bewildered man that she is only joking. Recovering from his momentary panic, Ian glares playfully at the smiling girl and scoffs that her sense of humor is just as harsh as ever. Crossing his arms with an expectant look, Ian demands to know what she truly wants from him now that the jokes are out of the way. Staring back with unshakable resolve, Alexia calmly states that she simply wants him not to oppose her, firmly adding that she doesn't even need him to take her side. Flashing a confident, knowing smile, she clarifies that remaining a completely neutral party is more than enough to satisfy their arrangement. Staring at her serene profile in quiet disbelief, a hesitant Ian asks if she is truly satisfied with such a minimal commitment. Realizing how beneficial the terms are, Ian admits it is not a bad deal, prompting Alexia to cheerfully ask for his final thoughts on their exclusive academy-only arrangement. Flashing a rare, charming wink, the handsome aide officially accepts her terms and solidifies their secret pastry-fueled alliance. Beaming with absolute triumph, Alexia declares the matter settled and happily thrusts an entire woven basket of homemade sweets into his waiting hands. Blushing with genuine delight, a surprisingly boyish Ian eagerly accepts the heavy basket and graciously thanks her for the generous gift. Realizing he had completely misunderstood Miss Rachette, he eagerly looks forward to their future interactions. A heavy, deliberate step echoes sharply against the stone floor. Flanked by two gossiping girls, Alexia firmly declares she does not need to know that the prince is in the student council room today. Relaxing with a delicious treat, the red-haired boy happily notes that his plan to nap in the courtyard resulted in an unexpected bounty. He smiles thoughtfully, pleased that he also managed to make a valuable connection with Miss Rachette. He quietly admits his surprise at her true personality, recalling how she used to treat him like he was invisible whenever she stood next to Geoffrey. He also considers the impressive prowess of Eric, Miss Rachette's highly coveted guard knight who was trained by a former legendary commander. Smirking slightly, he hopes that getting closer to her will eventually earn him a chance to request a training duel. Staring intently at his prize, he realizes it is the very last piece of cake. He carefully analyzes her clear ultimatum, concluding she simply wants him to stay out of her way without actively becoming her enemy. A confident grin spreads across his face as he admits he actually respects that kind of brutal clarity. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when someone approaches and points out the treat in his hand. Startled by the sudden intrusion, he firmly refuses to hand over his prize while warning the other boy not to sneak up on him. His dark-haired companion sternly reprimands Stefano, warning him never to accept food from strangers so carelessly. Stefano sighs deeply, admitting he was just lectured with the exact same warning when he received the pastry. Visibly confused, his friend questions why the mysterious benefactor would give him the food immediately after scolding him. Rubbing the back of his neck, Stefano awkwardly confesses that he practically forced her to hand it over. He explains that the food looked simply too delicious to resist, earning him a fierce scolding the second he took a bite. His companion shakes his head, bluntly stating that getting yelled at was the only natural outcome for such reckless behavior. Looking suitably chastised, Stefano quickly promises that he has learned his lesson and won't repeat the mistake. Crossing his arms, the dark-haired boy presses further, demanding to know which noble lady is close enough to scold him and feed him sweets. Stefano casually drops the bombshell that the generous lady was none other than Miss Rachette. While Stefano happily devours the rest of the treat, his companion freezes in absolute, wide-eyed shock. Noting the stunned reaction, Stefano questions if it is really that surprising, though he concedes she previously only had eyes for Prince Geoffrey. Stefano quickly clarifies that the sweet treat was definitely not intended as a political bribe. He cheerfully recounts how he found her laughing with another girl in the courtyard and simply asked for a piece. Blushing slightly, Stefano enthusiastically admits that it was the very first time he had ever seen her smile so genuinely. The dark-haired boy falls completely silent, his eyes darkening with complex emotions as he processes this unexpected revelation. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to the commotion she caused, a delighted Alexia celebrates the massive success of her vegetable-based sweets. A shadow suddenly looms over her as a familiar, authoritative voice calls out her name. Spotting Ian Caffrey nearby, Alexia cheerfully asks if he needs something, prompting a hesitant denial from the flustered aide. Sweating nervously, Alexia wonders if something is wrong with her vegetable sweets, but Ian quickly explains he simply ran into Stefano earlier. Maintaining a serious expression, Ian shakes his head and clarifies that the pastries are not the issue at all. Tilting her head in confusion, Alexia presses him to reveal what is actually bothering him. A sudden realization brightens Alexia's face as she excitedly deduces that the stoic aide might just want to taste her treats. Watching Ian thoughtfully touch his chin, Alexia internally squeals over how cute it is that someone so serious is secretly shy about liking sweets. Flashing a warm smile, she gently offers to share some of her delicious vegetable cakes with the hesitant man. The unexpected offer leaves Ian standing in stunned silence as he processes her genuine generosity. Leaning in with a slightly concerned expression, Alexia double-checks if he is truly comfortable accepting her gift. Having confirmed his suspicions, Ian confidently accepts and insists on offering her something in return for the favor. Staring back in wide-eyed shock, Alexia frantically searches for a polite request, knowing she cannot jokingly demand he become her servant. She crosses her arms and falls into deep thought, carefully considering what she could possibly ask of the Crown Prince's aide. Breaking the silence, Ian smoothly suggests a trip to Blanche, leaving Alexia absolutely floored by the name. Ian explains that his family invests in the widely popular pudding shop, sending Alexia into a frenzy of excitement over their famous tasting sets. Overwhelmed by the promise of firm pudding, the ecstatic Villainess practically screams her desperate desire to visit the shop. Amused by her enthusiastic reaction, Ian gently promises to keep in touch and finalize the details of their upcoming outing later. While the black cat watches silently, Alexia eagerly accepts the invitation and vows to wait for his message. Suddenly, the faint sounds of whispering catch her attention as an unseen onlooker smugly claims they were right all along. The gossiping voices excitedly conclude that Ian's smooth pudding offer was unquestionably a romantic date invitation. Overhearing the scandalous rumor, a horrified Alexia reels back in pure disbelief. Panicking over her ruined peaceful life, she internally screams that she wants absolutely nothing to do with this excessive romantic drama. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the delighted maids happily swarm the giant black cat, begging to pet his adorable fur. Glaring at the smug feline lounging comfortably on a plush pillow, Alexia harshly scolds Fair for blending into her household way too easily. Flashing a wicked, toothy grin, the magical beast arrogantly boasts that his feline form is simply irresistible. As he smugly brags about how effortlessly he manipulates her entire staff, a dark shadow of pure irritation falls over Alexia's face. Having heard enough of his arrogant nonsense, the furious Villainess violently rings a silver handbell to summon her servants. A dutiful maid instantly appears at the door, ready to answer her lady's urgent call. The cheerful servant bows gracefully, eagerly awaiting her master's next command. Pointing a ruthless finger at the suddenly terrified cat, Alexia coldly orders the maid to give the sticky pet a painfully thorough bath. Leaning in with a terrifying demonic glare, she sadistically commands the maid to scrub every single inch of the beast without mercy. Realizing his doom is imminent, the horrified cat lets out a desperate screech as he frantically scrambles to escape his watery fate.
A voice questions whether skipping today's gathering was truly acceptable. Alexia casually enjoys her cupcake and asks Miss Jenny if her own absence is all right. Jenny happily replies that spending time with Miss Alexia and Miss Ariana is vastly more enjoyable. A male voice suddenly interrupts the peaceful moment, wondering aloud about his own presence in their group. The three girls stare in deadpan silence as the smirking young man holds up a stolen treat. Jenny asks Sir Gallas why he skipped, but he dismissively states he only went previously to accompany Luigi and cares nothing for the event. Gallus intensely declares that the sweet dessert resting in his hand takes absolute priority over everything else. Alexia silently worries that the group has grown uncomfortably attached to her simply because of her test cake. Frustration mounts in Alexia's mind as she realizes she has made zero progress in withdrawing her official candidacy. Adding to her immense stress, a strange and utterly incomprehensible holy sword continues to stalk her every move. Alexia mentally laments that despite vowing to avoid the heroine's targets, she finds herself hopelessly tangled up with Jeffrey, Ian, and Stefano. She mentally screams her ultimate desire to simply live a peaceful life entirely free from future condemnation. Changing the subject to academics, someone brings up the rapidly approaching practical skills exam. The girls nervously confirm the rumor that they will be separated into combat groups to fight. Ariana timidly admits her anxiety over facing her very first practical exam. Trembling, she confesses her poor magical control and deeply fears becoming a massive burden to her future teammates. Another student expertly explains that the exam rigorously evaluates individual magic, weapon skills, and vital teamwork coordination. Jenny warmly reassures Ariana that teams are carefully balanced and urges her to simply do her best without overexerting herself. Alexia agrees completely, noting that true combat efficiency relies entirely on placing the right person in the correct strategic role. Smiling confidently, Alexia states she plans to stay safely in the backline, since a duke's daughter getting injured would spark a massive commotion. Ian seriously promises that even if they are placed on different teams, he will remain close by on the exam grounds. He stares intently at Alexia, fiercely instructing her to shout loudly the exact moment any danger arises. Despite the reassurance, Jenny admits she completely understands Miss Ariana's lingering dread regarding the test. Ariana nervously hopes that things won't escalate to a dangerous, life-threatening point. Dark rumors dictate that surging dark magic will make this year's exam mimic a terrifying real-world battlefield. The group solemnly acknowledges that the ancient seals trapping disastrous evil forces are steadily decaying and regaining strength. Alexia visualizes the impending birth of the saint, an illegitimate daughter destined to combat evil while surrounded by handsome capture targets. Sweating nervously, Alexia prays the future heroine avoids a reverse harem route entirely, wishing only to be left out of the chaotic romance. Ariana suddenly realizes she misspoke and frantically apologizes to Jenny while the others look on in stunned silence. Blushing furiously, Ariana explains her panic stems from the shallow realization that the future saint usually marries someone directly from the royal family. Seizing the perfect opening, Alexia boldly decides to bypass her pending official audience and reveal her massive secret right then and there. She formally and loudly declares that she no longer holds any desire to become the crown prince's wife. The entire group recoils in absolute, wide-eyed shock at the explosive and completely unexpected revelation. Gallas and Ariana yell out in disbelief, demanding to know how she could throw away something she worked so tirelessly to achieve. Alexia calmly explains that she was previously blinded by an obsessive fixation, but the goal completely lost its meaning once her perspective shifted. She happily notes that broadening her horizons granted her free time and allowed her to finally make wonderful new friends. With absolute, unbreakable conviction, Alexia firmly states she harbors zero remaining attachment to her past ambitions. Flashing a brilliant smile, she asks if taking the role of the pursued rather than the desperate chaser suits her current self much better. Her friends eagerly agree, passionately validating her empowering new outlook on romance and self-worth. Alexia softly asks them to judge her by who she is today, leaving her previous desperate self behind in the past. Shifting her intense, unyielding gaze directly toward Sir Gallas, she prepares to deliver her final absolute boundary. Glaring sharply, Alexia strictly orders a sweating Gallas to permanently cease reporting Lord Geoffrey's affairs to her. Mentally, she genuinely wishes the future saint turns out to be a wonderful girl, considering her inevitable marriage into the royal family. She desperately prays the heroine is kind enough to naturally inspire support, while begging the universe to spare her from an absurd reverse harem scenario. Night falls peacefully over the quiet noble district as sparkling fireworks illuminate the starry sky above the sprawling rooftops. Posing confidently in a brand new dress, Alexia triumphantly declares today is dedicated entirely to enjoying limitless pudding. A tiny, judgmental cat icon highlights someone questioning if her beautiful, elaborate outfit is truly appropriate for a simple dessert run. Alexia casually defends her pristine fashion choice, stating that a disguise is entirely unnecessary for a shop located securely within the noble district. A teasing voice loudly accuses her of dressing up for a secret date, urging her to put even more effort into her stunning appearance. Flustered and deeply annoyed, Alexia yells back that her sweet outing is strictly platonic and absolutely not a date. Brushing off her maid's concern, Alexia cheerfully declares that absolutely nothing is wrong. The bustling city streets reveal an elegant jewelry shop where their highly anticipated meeting is supposed to take place. Spotting Lord Ian Caffrey tangled up with a clinging girl, Alexia sweats nervously and strongly considers simply turning back. A desperate Ian spots Miss Rachette and urgently begs the girls to stay away from him if they are going to argue. Peeking around the corner, a completely bewildered Alexia wonders if the strange pair is actually having a fight right in the street. Sweating bullets, Ian explains he ran into the girl by the shop and begs Alexia to help peel the nuisance off him. Delivering an instant and merciless rejection, Alexia flatly states she wants absolutely no part in such a troublesome situation. She coldly tells him no thanks, genuinely wondering why she should be expected to intervene in his personal mess. Suddenly shifting her stance, Alexia boldly offers her services on the strict condition that she is allowed to eat a terrifying amount of food. Ian eagerly agrees to the deal, promising she can eat whatever she wants and will even receive extra gifts as compensation. Flashing a brilliant, victorious smirk, Alexia successfully demands that he also cover massive portions for all her guards and attendants. Ian explains the crying nuisance is a distant relative who followed him into town, prompting Alexia to finally ask who the girl is. Alexia silently judges Lord Caffrey's pathetic situation, finding it bizarre that he cannot handle such a minor annoyance himself. Frustrated, Ian complains the persistent girl is utterly impossible to reason with and he just wants to survive the current moment before dealing with her at home. Annoyed by the blatant manipulation, Alexia mentally complains that he is shamelessly dumping his exhausting problem directly onto her. Ian slyly points out that she is supposedly an expert at this, referencing rumors that she mercilessly drives away anyone trying to flirt with Duke Rachette. Crossing her arms with supreme aristocratic confidence, Alexia haughtily declares that any shallow girl easily brushed off is simply unworthy of her father. Stepping forward with menacing intent, Alexia asks Lord Caffrey if she has his official permission to completely destroy the girl however she sees fit. Ian warns her that the unknown girl is a younger, unenrolled count's daughter who is likely trying to force her way into becoming his partner. Ian watches in tense, silent anticipation as Alexia prepares to take absolute control of the chaotic situation. The furious girl throws a massive tantrum, screaming at Alexia to finally give Ian back to her. Shrieking that she is being ignored, the girl desperately tries to pull Lord Caffrey away. Glaring down with terrifyingly cold eyes, Alexia mockingly remarks she thought she merely heard a noisy bird chirping. With a piercing gaze, Alexia strictly lectures the girl on proper etiquette, stating she will only overlook the lack of an introduction because this isn't a formal social event. The enraged girl haughtily announces she is a count's daughter going on a date with Ian, demanding the rude intruder stay out of it. Alexia viciously strikes back, ordering the ignorant girl to stay confined in her territory if she doesn't even know the most basic social etiquette. Alexia narrows her fierce, unyielding eyes, locking onto her trembling target as she prepares to completely dismantle the girl's foolish confidence. When the girl claims they are close, Alexia fiercely shuts her down, stating she never allowed such familiarity and demanding she properly address him as Lord Caffrey. Gesturing toward a deeply uncomfortable Ian, Alexia brutally advises the girl to relearn her basic manners first since the Lord himself clearly rejects her familiarity. Alexia aggressively interrogates the trembling girl, asking if she truly wants to ruin her entire family by parading such exhausting ignorance as a noble lady. Desperately trying to save face, the girl accuses the daughter of Count Tyam of picking a fight and demands to know why she wasn't greeted first. Staring with absolute, crushing authority, Alexia tells the ignorant girl she clearly doesn't understand her place trying to casually approach a duke's son. The color drains from the girl's face as she stammers out the realization of Alexia's terrifyingly high status, prompting Ian to immediately call for their departure. Alexia delivers a final, chilling warning, advising the girl to learn how to properly choose her opponents before blindly picking a fight. Shifting her lethal focus, Alexia sharply reprimands the girl's personal maid for completely failing her duty to correct and discipline her master's reckless mistakes. She strictly informs the sweating maid that absolutely no noble household will ever accept the girl if she is left to act like a wild animal. The frantic maid and her panicking master flinch in absolute terror, utterly overwhelmed by the arrogant display of Alexia's overwhelming social power. Smoothly taking Lord Caffrey's arm, Alexia smiles brightly and notes she is merely returning the favor for his earlier assistance. Handing the defeated girl off to her maid, Alexia orders them back home, sarcastically adding that Count Tyam would surely thank them for avoiding a scandal. As a final crushing blow, Alexia challenges the maid to drop the mighty Rachette family name if they run into any further resistance. Safely escaping the chaotic street, a heavily exhausted Ian sighs in immense relief as he finally catches his breath on a quiet balcony. The two exhausted nobles finally settle into an elegant, sunlit VIP room to relax and recover from the intense public ordeal. Ian sincerely thanks Alexia for stepping in to save him, while she happily promises to properly enjoy the pudding she earned. Flashing a mischievous smile, Alexia warns her wealthy host that she absolutely won't hold back when ordering her sweet reward. Sipping his tea gracefully, Ian generously invites her to eat as much as she likes, noting that several exciting new varieties have arrived today. Alexia cheerfully notes that being secured in a private VIP room perfectly prevents Ian's crazy admirers from causing any more public trouble. Savoring a massive bite, Alexia hums in absolute, uninterrupted bliss as the sweet flavor instantly melts on her tongue. Blushing with sheer culinary joy, she gleefully declares the decadent pudding to be absolutely incredible. Watching her radiant, dramatic reaction, a slightly sweat-dropping Ian points out just how deeply and intensely she truly loves sweets. Holding up a perfect cherry-topped spoonful, an ecstatic Alexia eagerly demands that Lord Caffrey try some of the amazing dessert himself. Savoring the sweet treat, Ian cheerfully notes that the dessert truly is incredibly good. He smirks playfully and advises Alexia that giving an angry woman a special dessert is the perfect way to appease her. Holding her spoon like a weapon, an enthusiastic Alexia fiercely agrees with his brilliant tactical assessment. Ian mentally notes that bribing the Duke's daughter with premium sweets is a foolproof strategy to survive her wrath. When Ian wonders if someone might eventually catch her eye, a flustered Alexia frantically denies any personal romantic interest. Her mind instantly flashes to the game's heroine, filling her with dread over the impending romantic chaos she desperately wants to avoid. All her anxiety instantly melts away as she blissfully takes another bite of the heavenly pudding. Resting his chin on his hand, Ian watches her unbridled culinary joy with a gentle and deeply fascinated smile. While Alexia mentally vows to avoid the heroine, Ian secretly wonders what she would look like if she genuinely fell in love. Shifting the mood entirely, Ian casually brings up the rapidly approaching practical skills exam. He stares at her intently, questioning if a high-ranking noble lady like her truly fears the dangers of actual combat. Alexia flashes a fearless smirk, mentally wondering if he secretly prefers fragile girls who constantly need protection. Staring at her unshakable confidence, Ian deadpans his immediate agreement and fully recognizes her unyielding strength. Slightly annoyed by his blunt honesty, a pouting Alexia immediately demands another massive serving of dessert. She instantly lights up again, passionately explaining how incredibly fun it is to compare the varying textures and flavors. Ian happily presents her with a massive, decadent dessert platter, basking in her absolute delight over the new varieties. He silently absorbs her intense culinary critique, intrigued by her shockingly refined palate. Alexia enthusiastically suggests adding a splash of aromatic liquor to elevate the sweet dessert's adult appeal. Leaning in with genuine interest, Ian eagerly asks if she has any further expert suggestions to improve the dish. Pointing at the delicate treats, she proposes increasing the milk ratio and adding seasonal fruits for absolute perfection. Ian promises to relay her refined feedback to the chef, while she humbly downplays her brilliant ideas as mere ramblings. Surrounded by a mountain of treats, Alexia continues to happily gorge herself on the limitless supply of premium sweets. The peaceful afternoon slowly fades as they conclude their unexpectedly pleasant and incredibly filling dessert outing. Stepping out into the evening air, Ian smoothly escorts a surprised Alexia all the way back to her waiting carriage. Blushing slightly, Alexia mentally admits that being pampered and escorted by a handsome noble isn't entirely terrible. Giving her a serious look, Ian reveals he will be guarding Prince Geoffrey during the exam and urges her to call him if danger strikes. Alexia gracefully accepts his warning and playfully declares her massive dessert feast as more than enough of a reward. Safe inside her carriage, she sighs in sheer annoyance at how fiercely protective the game's main capture targets are acting. Pure panic sets in as she suddenly realizes all this ominous foreshadowing points straight to a dangerous event during the exam. The fateful day of the practical exam finally arrives, plunging the entire academy into a state of tense and nervous anticipation. Standing fiercely in her combat uniform, Alexia notes a deeply unsettling atmosphere hanging heavily over the event grounds. She mentally reviews the standard exam rules, noting that this year's setup brutally breaks all normal safety traditions. Frustration violently mounts as she realizes they have been thrust into the dangerous and highly restricted forest behind the academy. A trembling Jenny approaches, voicing her own deep concerns about the shockingly dangerous and irregular training environment. Alexia gently holds Jenny's hands, desperately wishing she could personally shield her dear friend from the unknown threats lurking ahead. Scanning her randomly assigned squad, Alexia internally notes that Commoner Lisa's holy magic is dangerously underdeveloped for combat. She analytically breaks down her extremely fragile 5-person team structure with a hypercritical eye. Sizing up the boys, Alexia quickly determines that only the Count's son Dave Wiener has any actual combat potential. Suspicion aggressively flares in her eyes, absolutely certain that some malicious force deliberately assembled this overwhelmingly weak team. Trying to boost morale, a magical cat familiar loudly boasts about Alexia's custom sacred rapier specially forged for noble ladies. Alexia brushes off the cat's boasting, gripping her weapon and mentally preparing herself to carry the entire weak squad. From the sidelines, concerned observers whisper nervously about the incredibly unfair and highly suspicious team placement given to the Duke's daughter. The elite nobles quietly agree that keeping the exam details completely secret until the last possible second reeks of deliberate sabotage. Trapped by their strict royal duties, the elite guards realize with heavy hearts that they cannot abandon Prince Geoffrey to go help Alexia. A blood-curdling scream suddenly shatters the forest silence, violently interrupting the tense exam preparations. Absolute chaos violently erupts as terrified students desperately break formation and flee from the dark tree-line. Ian and the royal guards unsheathe their weapons in pure horror as a lethal magical beast crashes directly into the student grounds. As the beast violently attacks, a terrified Jenny fiercely vows to protect Alexia while others scream frantically for them to run. A frantic Ian screams Alexia's name, utterly consumed by terror for her safety as the massive monster lunges forward. Unflinching, Alexia's high heels dig fiercely into the dirt as she charges directly toward the impending danger. Frustrated by the unfolding chaos, Alexia fiercely declares that this entire suspicious situation must have been planned from the very beginning. A shadowy figure deceptively urges Lady Rochette to move just a little further into the mysterious area. Sensing impending danger, Alexia strictly commands the group to halt and refuses to go any deeper into the forest. Despite the clear warning, a hesitant voice desperately tries to protest the sudden halt. Menacing thugs suddenly emerge from the shadows, aggressively announcing that they will take over escorting her from the trembling Lisa. To everyone's absolute shock, Lisa coldly confesses that her sole mission was to betray Lady Rochette and hand her directly over to the sinister men. Confusion momentarily stalls the thugs as the massive bald leader furiously demands to know which of the two curly-haired girls is their actual target. A terrified Jenny trembles while the magical cat familiar hysterically mocks the thugs for relying solely on curly hair to identify their victim. While Jenny tearfully demands how Lisa could betray her teammates, the traitor emotionlessly points out the correct target. The bald thug cruelly reveals that the seemingly treacherous girl is nothing more than a mindless puppet being completely controlled by manipulation magic. A horrified Jenny covers her mouth in absolute dismay at the sickening revelation of the girl's stolen free will. Alexia seethes with burning rage, questioning if the masterminds view a commoner as nothing more than an easily disposable pawn. Jenny furiously realizes that dragging a high-ranking duke's daughter into such a vile plot carries severe, inescapable consequences. She fiercely states that the perpetrators will have absolutely no choice but to atone for this massive crime with their very lives. Blades violently clash as the noble students desperately engage the frustrated thugs in a tense, high-stakes skirmish. A noble student fiercely orders Lady Rochette to flee, passionately declaring that abandoning his VP completely violates the honorable way of a knight. The massive bald thug sneers mockingly at the boy's courageous but foolish display of knightly pride. With brutal, overwhelming force, the muscular thug viciously punches the young noble directly in the gut, instantly crushing his brave defense. The boy collapses in agony as the thug mercilessly reminds them that street fighters do not play by the noble rules of knights. Desperate and injured, the fallen student begs Lady Alexia to run away as quickly as possible. Alexia gasps in horror, her hand reaching out helplessly as her brave classmates are brutally beaten down before her eyes. The remaining injured boys bravely form a fragile human wall, desperately screaming for the girls to escape while they still can. Trembling with overwhelming guilt, an agonizing Alexia cries out that abandoning her injured friends is completely impossible. A soft expression crosses Alexia's face as she sincerely thanks the boys for their incredible, selfless bravery. Her expression instantly darkens into a fierce glare, realizing that simply running away will never guarantee their survival. Demanding answers, Alexia confronts the leader, who bluntly orders her to surrender quietly if she wants the violence to stop. The bald leader smirks in dark amusement, sadistically praising her for intelligently reading the hopeless situation. Dismissing her question, the thug carelessly reveals they were merely hired to capture any noticeably curly-haired girl. Projecting an aura of absolute aristocratic authority, Alexia coldly asks if they truly understand the terrifying consequences of crossing the Rochette family. The magical cat bursts into hysterical laughter at the unbelievably vague and stupid kidnapping criteria, leaving Jenny utterly bewildered. Alexia flashes a terrifyingly wicked smile, dripping with heavy sarcasm as she mocks their supposedly flawless master plan. She quickly deduces the enemy's strategy, realizing this entire ambush was orchestrated specifically because her elite guard Eric is absent. The confident thug smugly agrees with her brilliant deduction, stepping closer to claim his high-value prize. With a sinister chuckle, the bald leader ruthlessly orders his violent subordinates to drag the Duke's daughter over to him. A thug roughly grabs Alexia's arm, deceptively promising to spare her friends only if she surrenders without a fight. Suddenly losing her balance, Alexia lets out a sharp gasp as she clumsily stumbles forward into the thug's grasp. With her head bowed, Alexia mutters a quiet, seemingly defeated apology for her sudden clumsiness. Leaning heavily against the confused thug, she innocently claims she merely tripped while her eyes glow with deadly intent. Disgusted by her apparent weakness, the thug scoffs and orders the supposedly fragile noble to walk on her own. Instantly dropping her innocent act, Alexia flashes a brilliant, predatory smile and delivers an absolute, unapologetic refusal. The thugs freeze in stunned confusion, completely caught off guard by the sudden and dramatic shift in her demeanor. Drawing her weapon, Alexia boldly admits her fear of her first real battle while fiercely challenging their authority to command her. The grinning magical cat familiar confidently positions itself beside her, proudly announcing its powerful support. Her unyielding gaze locks onto the terrifying thugs, radiating an aura of unbreakable aristocratic confidence. Standing tall and defiant, she powerfully reminds the common thugs of the immense weight carried by the Rochette family name. With absolute, crushing disdain, Alexia furiously declares she will never bow down to pathetic street riffraff like them. She tightly grips the ornate hilt of her customized rapier, her knuckles turning white as she fully commits to the impending bloody battle. Surrounded by a magical aura of blooming roses, Alexia draws her sacred blade and fiercely commands her enemies to prepare for their complete destruction. Her terrified classmates frantically scream for her to stop and run away, desperately trying to intervene before the Duke's daughter gets hurt. Completely ignoring their frantic pleas to run, Alexia stubbornly refuses to back down, cementing her absolute resolve to fight as a true Rochette. The muscular thugs arrogantly order Alexia to stop interfering unnecessarily in their dark business. The mocking leader taunts her supposedly useless stance, wondering what a fragile girl with an undrawn sword could possibly do. Alexia coolly asks if the overconfident brute realizes just how dangerous a fully drawn blade can truly be. The confident thug demands she throw the weapon away and surrender quietly. While the men admit they were hired not to hurt her, a defiant Alexia fiercely vows to resist them with everything she has. She smoothly prepares her combat stance, strictly warning the foolish men to make sure they do not get injured. A terrified Jenny cries out for Lady Alexia to stop, mistakenly believing her trembling friend is pushing herself way too far. In a blinding flash of motion, Alexia launches herself forward with breathtaking, explosive speed. The stunned thugs gasp in absolute shock as the seemingly delicate noble girl effortlessly shatters their frontline defenses. A bewildered criminal screams in pure disbelief, completely flabbergasted that the Duke's daughter can actually wield a real sword. Flashing a terrifying smile, Alexia coldly reminds the crushed men that she never once claimed she couldn't fight. She smoothly pivots her stance, declaring that their foolish underestimation gave her the absolute perfect opening to strike. Declaring her status with quiet resolve, the young woman insists she is merely a weak noble. Shattering that illusion, a frustrated enemy curses her hidden strength and demands to know why she isn't acting like the weak noble she claims to be. Flushed with embarrassment as her admirers swoon over Lady Alexia, she desperately insists her past ambition to become a fighting queen is firmly behind her. Questioning her logic, a smug cat-like companion gestures toward her sword and asks why she doesn't just claim the throne. Trembling with comical rage, the young noblewoman fiercely grips her rapier and threatens to break her companion's arm for pushing the issue. Staring down her imposing figure, an unseen assailant curses their awful luck upon realizing they are facing a legitimate fighting noble. With a deadly serious glare, she warns her enemies not to underestimate her prowess on the battlefield. Stepping forward with menacing intent, an injured enemy desperately reaches for a discarded club on the cracked earth. Screaming in panic, an ally warns Lady Rochette and Lady Alexia of a sudden ambush from behind. Gasping in pure shock, the young noblewoman violently flinches as danger closes in. Tearing through the air, a high-speed blur of motion violently interrupts the fatal strike. Shielding Lady Rochette from harm, a mysterious dark-haired man steps into the fray and calmly asks if she is all right. Recognizing her sudden savior, a voice calls out the name of Ian Caffrey in utter disbelief. Staring wide-eyed at Ian's protective back, she freezes as the reality of his sudden appearance sets in. Demanding to know why he is here, she is swiftly cut off as Ian coolly promises to explain everything later. Taking command of the situation, the dark-haired warrior politely instructs Miss Rochette to step back and clear the danger zone. Confessing the grim reality of her situation, she internally admits that this is her first real battle and she wouldn't have lasted much longer alone. Readying his stance with absolute confidence, Ian boldly declares that he won't hold back against their attackers. Watching his fearless display, a lingering sense of awe washes over the rescued noblewoman. Blazing forward with explosive speed and a drawn blade, Ian completely shatters her expectations with his incredibly strong assault. He stares in pure awe at the defeated thugs, noting that such overwhelming strength is exactly what he expects from a prime target. Rushing frantically to her side, a deeply concerned Ian urgently asks if she suffered any injuries during the brutal encounter. Alexia calmly assures him she is completely fine, casually mentioning that her family's heavily armed reinforcements will be arriving shortly. She smoothly reveals a glowing magical device, explaining she immediately activated it the exact second she spotted the monstrous beast. Ian closely inspects the intricate tool, realizing it is a high-level magic artifact that instantly transmits an emergency signal. Turning briskly toward her stunned classmates, Alexia tightly claps her hands to command their absolute and undivided attention. She desperately begs everyone to keep her incredible swordsmanship a strict secret, wishing to remain a useless noble lady until her engagement is officially annulled. Trying her best to sell the delicate act, she nervously asks if a weak noble wildly waving a sword sounds completely ridiculous. Her deeply loyal friends enthusiastically agree to her strange request, passionately promising to take her heroic secret straight to the grave. Locking eyes with her handsome royal rescuer, Alexia firmly demands that Mr. Caffrey also keep his mouth entirely shut about the incident. A highly amused Ian freely admits he doesn't fully understand her bizarre logic, but he happily agrees to her strict terms regardless. Soon after, elite Rachette guards storm the damaged forest, swiftly arresting the unconscious thugs and completely securing the chaotic area. A trembling Jenny throws her arms tightly around Alexia, crying heavy tears of sheer relief now that the terrifying ordeal is finally over. Alexia warmly hugs her dear friend back, silently vowing to forcefully crush absolutely anyone who ever threatens their peaceful academy life. As the rescued students are safely escorted back to the main grounds, Ian watches Alexia's retreating back with a newfound, burning intrigue. Alexia sighs in heavy, dramatic exhaustion, mentally complaining that this ridiculous combat exam completely ruined her peaceful afternoon plans. She fiercely resolves to gorge herself on a massive mountain of premium pudding the absolute second she successfully returns home. Despite the looming, ominous shadows of the impending game plot, Alexia strides forward with unbreakable confidence, entirely ready to forge her own unique destiny. Alexia cheerfully greets her overprotective brother, absolutely thrilled that he arrived just in time to safely secure the chaotic scene. Her brother sharply assesses the dangerous situation, confirming that the vicious thugs were indeed attempting a brazen kidnapping. With absolute, unbreakable authority, he immediately orders his loyal subordinates to drag the defeated criminal away. He coldly identifies the massive man as the gang's leader and declares they will take him directly to their estate for a brutal interrogation. Shifting his piercing gaze, her brother abruptly changes the subject with a deeply intimidating aura radiating from his entire body. He locks his sharp eyes onto the young Duke's son, formally acknowledging Ian Caffrey's suspicious presence on the battlefield. He strictly thanks Lord Caffrey for his battlefield assistance, coldly noting that his precious sister was temporarily placed under Ian's care. A deeply flustered Ian desperately tries to downplay his heroic involvement, nervously stammering that his meager help was barely worth mentioning. Alexia's brother fiercely cuts him off, aggressively warning the boy that pulling a basic rescue stunt won't easily earn his highly coveted favor. Completely mortified by her brother's aggressive and embarrassing posturing, Alexia screams out in pure, unfiltered humiliation. He ruthlessly interrogates Ian, demanding to know why he secretly whisked his innocent sister away to the city a few days prior. Caught completely off guard by the explosive and unexpected romantic accusation, Ian freezes in utter, wide-eyed disbelief. Ian frantically insists they merely went to eat sweets, though a nearby whisper mockingly points out that his defense perfectly describes a romantic date. Alexia furiously demands everyone stop exaggerating the simple outing, while her friends blush and squabble over the hilarious, mounting misunderstanding. Amidst the chaotic bickering of the nobility, a heavy, exhausted sigh escapes from one of the deeply exasperated onlookers. Quickly shifting her entire focus away from the childish argument, Alexia gently comforts a violently trembling Miss Jenny. Jenny lets out a soft, trembling gasp as the overwhelming realization of her absolute safety finally washes over her mind. Unable to hold back her intense, swirling emotions any longer, Jenny's wide eyes suddenly brim with heavy, falling tears. With a sudden, explosive burst of emotion, Jenny fiercely throws her arms around Alexia in a desperate and clinging embrace. Crying uncontrollably into her shoulder, Jenny deeply apologizes for being so utterly terrified and helpless during the brutal ambush. She passionately insists that Alexia must have been vastly more terrified as the primary target, sobbing that she is simply overjoyed her precious friend survived. Fiercely wiping away her streaming tears, Jenny loudly places the sole blame on the evil masterminds, leaving Alexia totally moved by her profound kindness. Alexia smiles softly and mentally laments that her own inability to cry openly makes her feel far less endearing than her deeply emotional friend. Blushing furiously, a highly flustered Jenny sheepishly admits her immense embarrassment over openly crying when Alexia was equally trapped in danger. Alexia playfully teases her crying friend, prompting Jenny to loudly and vehemently deny her own supposed moment of weakness. Staring with absolute, unyielding admiration, Jenny passionately declares that Lady Alexia has constantly possessed a heart of gold since they were small children. Deeply touched by the raw and unwavering loyalty of her lifelong friend, the usually confident Alexia remains momentarily speechless. Lord Caffrey officially steps forward to call for their immediate return to the academy, while Alexia softly thanks Jenny for her vital emotional support. Jenny watches Alexia's retreating form with an intense, unyielding gaze, fully recognizing the incredible internal strength her noble friend just displayed. In her devoted heart, Jenny firmly believes that a radiant girl like Alexia is absolutely the only person worthy of marrying directly into the royal family. She fiercely vows to forcefully support Alexia's true desires, even if that means completely abandoning the grand pursuit of the royal throne. Jenny genuinely prays that a powerful protector will eventually emerge, someone who will cherish and unconditionally defend Alexia above all else. Violently interrupting the sentimental moment, Alexia turns directly to Ian and sharply demands to know who orchestrated the brazen kidnapping attempt. Nearby, the Academy's elite royal guards frantically rush forward to administer critical medical aid to the battered and heavily injured noble students. Clenching his fists in burning rage, Ian furiously vows that he will never forgive the cowards for dragging innocent bystanders into their violent, bloody plot. Safely secured back in her elegant estate, Alexia calmly sips tea while her magical cat confidently brags about surviving its very first real battlefield. Alexia warmly expresses relief for her familiar's safety but immediately darkens the mood by noting the true, shadowy mastermind still roams completely free. The black cat vigorously agrees, loudly and aggressively declaring that such a brazen attack on sacred noble grounds is historically unprecedented. The magical familiar hysterically lists the absolute disasters of the Dark Day, highlighting the lethal monster assault, the kidnapping, and the terrifying attack on the Crown Prince. Alexia calmly explains that the Academy was forcefully shut down for an official investigation, heavily criticizing their pathetically slow emergency response and resulting massive scandal. The cat frowns deeply, revealing the shocking and disturbing rumor that the deadly training exercise was illegally altered without any official, higher-up permission. Staring ominously into the distance, the magical beast questions what unseen, highly malicious force could possibly orchestrate such a massive, flawless conspiracy. Flashing a dangerously cunning smirk, Alexia confidently counters that the chaotic disaster actually brought forth a massive, highly beneficial personal advantage. The familiar sweats nervously, loudly complaining that sinister and heavily hidden intentions are suddenly swirling everywhere around its unpredictable master. Radiating absolute, overwhelming triumph, Alexia gleefully announces that the monumental scandal perfectly finalized her long-awaited withdrawal from the royal engagement candidacy. When the cat points out she is foolishly throwing away the kingdom's highest seat, Alexia happily laughs and fiercely declares she cares absolutely nothing for the royal throne. With unyielding, terrifying resolve, she promises to completely reject the grand position the moment her highly anticipated official audience with the king finally occurs. As the scene dramatically shifts to the towering royal palace, the familiar mutters under its breath about its master's wonderfully strange and baffling priorities. Dressed in an absolutely stunning, highly elaborate formal gown, Alexia mentally prepares her flawless opening greeting on the fateful day of her royal audience. Before she can even begin her perfectly rehearsed speech, a deeply familiar and imposing voice instantly shatters the heavy silence by powerfully calling her name. A soft voice respectfully informs a deeply nervous Alexia that her highly anticipated meeting with the king will be strictly private. The official gently encourages her to relax her tense shoulders and simply speak honestly about whatever is heavily weighing upon her heart. Alexia takes a deep, steadying breath and formally nods, acknowledging the official's kind and highly reassuring advice. Mentally bracing herself, she notes that this is her very first time coming face to face with the monarch since regaining her past life's memories. Kneeling gracefully, she humbly thanks the imposing ruler for generously granting her this rare and vital audience. The king warmly welcomes Miss Alexia to the vibrant royal rose garden, gently urging her to relax and speak freely despite his overwhelming presence. Gathering her absolute resolve, Alexia looks directly at the monarch and formally requests that he grant her one ultimate wish. With unwavering conviction, she boldly declares that she has made the absolute, final decision to permanently withdraw from the royal engagement candidacy. The king briefly widens his eyes in surprise, quietly muttering that the swirling rumors of her sudden change of heart were actually true. Alexia strictly clarifies that this monumental decision was not forced upon her by her father, but rather stems entirely from her own true desires. Staring deeply into her determined eyes, the king solemnly asks if she truly comprehends the massive political weight of her request. Unflinching, Alexia passionately explains that she has finally broadened her horizons and found true happiness outside of her blinding royal obsession. She gracefully bows her head, respectfully asking the monarch to officially release her from the suffocating expectations of the royal family. A heavy, tense silence falls over the beautiful garden as the king carefully weighs the absolute sincerity radiating from the duke's daughter. Smiling softly, the king gently praises her incredible maturity and formally agrees to accept her highly unusual withdrawal. Overjoyed, Alexia's face lights up with sheer relief, feeling an invisible and massive chain finally shatter into a million pieces. Suddenly, rapid footsteps violently break the peaceful atmosphere as an enraged Prince Geoffrey unexpectedly storms directly into the royal garden. Spotting Alexia, the frantic prince demands to know what she is secretly plotting with his father behind his back. Before Alexia can even respond, the king sharply reprimands his son for brutally interrupting an incredibly private and official royal audience. Ignoring his father's strict warning, Geoffrey glares at Alexia and arrogantly accuses her of orchestrating yet another desperate scheme to win his attention. He loudly declares that no matter what dramatic stunt she pulls, he will never simply bow to her obsessive romantic demands. Alexia sighs heavily, deeply exhausted by the prince's massive ego and his complete inability to read the drastically changed situation. Drawing upon her unbreakable aristocratic poise, she calmly informs the furious prince that his aggressive accusations are completely baseless. A bewildered Geoffrey stubbornly insists that all her recent bizarre actions are clearly calculated moves to manipulate his feelings. Several royal guards rush in to secure the area, but the king silently gestures for them to hold back and observe the escalating confrontation. With cold, piercing eyes, Alexia bluntly tells the crown prince that he is embarrassing himself by clinging to completely outdated assumptions. A frustrated Geoffrey furiously screams at the onlookers to stop giving him unnecessary advice as he desperately tries to regain control of the narrative. He aggressively points a trembling finger at Alexia, loudly demanding to know exactly what highly manipulative lies she just told the king. Panting heavily, the prince angrily questions why everyone around him is suddenly rushing to passionately defend the supposedly wicked duke's daughter. The king simply shakes his head in quiet disappointment, silently observing his son's deeply emotional and heavily irrational outburst. Crossing her arms defensively, Alexia maintains an icy exterior while internally cringing at the prince's highly public tantrum. She confidently stands her ground, absolutely refusing to let the arrogant capture target intimidate her out of her hard-earned victory. Geoffrey practically begs for an explanation, utterly confused by her terrifyingly calm and completely indifferent demeanor. Taking a definitive step forward, Alexia prepares to drop the ultimate truth bomb that will completely shatter his massive, inflated ego. Staring blankly at the frantic prince, Alexia coldly states she has absolutely no idea what ridiculous thoughts the others are currently harboring. With absolute, crushing clarity, she proudly announces that she simply asked His Majesty to officially allow her to withdraw from the engagement candidacy. Geoffrey freezes in total, wide-eyed shock, the massive realization of her words completely short-circuiting his arrogant brain. When he smugly assumes she is merely changing her approach to play hard to get, Alexia firmly reiterates that her unyielding feelings will never change. Delivering her final, devastating blow, she deeply apologizes for constantly chasing him in the past and solemnly vows to never bother him ever again. A completely shattered Geoffrey lets out a pathetic gasp, utterly stunned by the cold, absolute finality of her brutal rejection. Flashing a polite but completely detached smile, Alexia gracefully announces it is finally time for her to return to her loving father. Leaving the dumbfounded prince completely speechless, she turns on her heel and delivers a flawless, aristocratic farewell. As she confidently walks away from her past, she momentarily wonders if she forgot something but quickly decides it simply doesn't matter anymore. Alexia smiles brilliantly as she steps out of the massive palace gates, finally tasting the sweet, intoxicating air of absolute freedom. She mentally celebrates her flawless victory, incredibly thrilled that she has completely severed all suffocating ties to the dangerous royal plotline. Her loyal magical cat familiar suddenly materializes beside her, smugly congratulating its master on her highly dramatic and successful escape. Laughing cheerfully, Alexia declares that her newfound freedom calls for an immediate, massive celebration involving towering piles of premium sweets. As she climbs into her waiting carriage, she completely ignores the distant, chaotic shouting echoing from the bewildered prince left far behind. Looking ahead to her bright and peaceful future, she firmly vows to spend the rest of her days enjoying her life on her own absolute terms. The carriage slowly rolls away into the golden sunset, carrying the triumphant and completely liberated Duke's daughter toward her new, unwritten destiny. Startled by a highly familiar voice suddenly calling her name, Alexia slowly turns around with a sharp and intensely guarded expression. Ian steps forward with a serious gaze, fiercely questioning if she has lingering business with Lord Geoffrey in the Rose Garden since she officially withdrew her royal candidacy. Flashing a brilliant and completely unbothered smile, Alexia gracefully deflects his intense inquiry by teasingly noting how incredibly fast rumors spread through the noble ranks. Maintaining her flawless aristocratic poise, she formally greets Lord Caffrey and prepares to swiftly shut down his lingering romantic suspicions. Ian deeply questions her true intentions, prompting Alexia to fiercely remind him that her mind is absolutely made up regarding her sudden change of heart. Turning her back with supreme, unbreakable confidence, she boldly declares she would vastly prefer the thrilling role of the pursued over the desperate chaser. Flashing a devastatingly confident smile over her shoulder, Alexia poses triumphantly and asks if her empowering new outlook perfectly suits her. Captivated by her absolute radiant confidence, a fiercely determined Ian smirks and vows that he will no longer hold back his own intense pursuit. Caught completely off guard by his sudden and highly aggressive romantic declaration, Alexia blinks in stunned, wide-eyed confusion. Her mind violently short-circuits as she desperately tries to process the terrifying realization that another major capture target has just locked onto her. The scene instantly shifts to the family carriage as her imposing father strictly questions if she successfully finalized her difficult conversation with the crown prince. Settling into his seat, the Duke casually mentions that he held a highly serious discussion with the king immediately after her dramatic departure. Alexia's eyes widen in sheer shock as she realizes her father brought up the terrifying, highly coordinated kidnapping attempt directly to the monarch. Her father gravely reveals that the massive thugs they brutally interrogated were completely brainwashed puppets controlled by an unknown, deeply sinister force. A cold shiver runs down Alexia's spine as she realizes this terrifying manipulation magic perfectly mirrors the tragic betrayal of her commoner classmate. The Duke confirms the traumatized girl was heavily questioned, maintaining a deadly serious expression as he prepares to deliver the most chilling detail. Alexia gasps in absolute horror as her father reveals that every single attacker's memories were wiped completely clean by the mysterious puppet master. The massive conspiracy deepens as they deduce the treacherous academy instructor was also magically mind-controlled into illegally altering the dangerous exam grounds. Panicking, Alexia nervously connects the sinister plot to her own fractured family, realizing the treacherous man is a distant relative of her father's second wife. Staring ahead with piercing, unyielding eyes, the Duke fiercely confirms his absolute suspicion regarding the deeply hidden family betrayal. Frustration heavily mounts as her father admits the king has officially halted their investigation, suggesting the monarch harbors his own secret, highly calculated plans. Stopping outside their grand estate, her father gently but firmly calls her name to command her complete, undivided attention. With absolute, uncompromising authority, he strictly orders his brilliant daughter to step back and leave this highly dangerous political warfare to the adults. Radiating an overwhelming aura of terrifying, protective rage, he passionately vows to rip the hidden truth from the shadows and entirely shield her from harm. Completely overwhelmed by his incredibly fierce paternal devotion, Alexia softly agrees and allows the heavy burden to be completely lifted from her weary shoulders. The sun rises brightly over the sprawling, pristine academy clock tower, signaling a deeply welcome return to a completely normal and peaceful daily life. Surrounded by her loyal friends, a radiant Alexia happily celebrates the official resumption of classes, deeply cherishing their wonderfully bright and peaceful academy days. The cheerful atmosphere instantly shatters as a highly familiar, deep voice suddenly calls out from behind, forcefully interrupting their happy conversation. A terrifying sense of pure déjà vu violently washes over Alexia as she freezes in place, dreading the incredibly ominous presence standing directly behind her. Sweating bullets, Alexia slowly turns to face an intensely staring Lord Caffrey, who boldly requests that she abandon her friends for a highly private conversation. Before she can even mount a defense, her blushing friends instantly betray her, frantically making wild excuses to sprint toward the library and leave the two entirely alone. Alexia mentally screams in absolute betrayal as her supposed friends disappear, leaving her hopelessly trapped under Ian's intense, unyielding gaze. She furiously wonders why everyone is suddenly treating them like an established romantic couple, deeply frustrated by the rapidly spiraling and totally incorrect rumors. Crossing her arms defensively, Alexia regains her aristocratic composure and coldly demands to know exactly what highly pressing business Ian has with her. A highly tense, incredibly awkward silence stretches between them as the usually confident nobleman struggles massively to find his next crucial words. Losing her patience entirely, Alexia fiercely turns her back and aggressively threatens to leave if he refuses to speak up immediately. Blushing furiously, Ian finally blurts out his deeply hidden request, desperately asking the stunned Duke's daughter to accompany him to the highly anticipated town festival. He instantly deploys his ultimate weapon, revealing that a famous sweet shop will be present, completely shattering Alexia's cold refusal. Alexia violently flinches, her absolute resolve instantly crumbling to dust the second she hears the magical name of the premium dessert shop. Her eyes sparkle with sheer, unfiltered culinary joy as Ian masterfully reveals the legendary chef actually integrated her brilliant, personal flavor suggestions. Completely forgetting the highly dangerous romantic implications, she leans in eagerly, totally obsessed with the magnificent prospect of tasting brand-new, customized sweets. Smiling softly at her hilariously transparent obsession, Ian desperately plays the sympathy card, claiming it would be far too awkward for a lone nobleman to attend the sweet stall. Utterly defeated by the promise of unlimited premium treats, Alexia happily agrees to the outing, entirely missing Ian's deeply affectionate whisper. The sweet victory is instantly destroyed as Stefano suddenly manifests directly behind them, loudly questioning their highly suspicious, private weekend plans. Alexia practically jumps out of her skin, screaming his name as the incredibly energetic and highly dangerous capture target flashes a brilliant, blinding wink. Stefano completely ignores Ian's deadly, territorial glare, seamlessly inserting himself directly into the conversation about the rapidly approaching festival. When Stefano cheerfully announces he will crash their highly anticipated outing, a deeply furious Ian instantly and ruthlessly shoots down the annoying intrusion. Alexia freezes in pure panic, frantically realizing that two incredibly powerful capture targets are about to brutally clash directly over her weekend plans. A massive, highly childish argument violently erupts between the two elite nobles, leaving a completely drained Alexia utterly exhausted by their massive egos. Ian fiercely guards his hard-earned date by screaming a final, absolute rejection, while Stefano desperately whines about wanting a share of the delicious treats. Trembling slightly, the young woman gasps in sheer shock as an incredibly awkward situation unfolds before her. Flustered by the mounting tension, she demands the two men sort out this awkwardness between themselves. Visibly annoyed by the standoff, she huffs that she genuinely doesn't mind who decides to accompany her. Bowing respectfully to the two startled men, the maid swiftly excuses herself from the stifling room. Turning sharply, Stefano points a questioning finger as a sudden realization dawns on his tense features. Caught entirely off guard, Lord Caffrey's face erupts in a heavy blush when asked if he harbors feelings for Miss Rosette. Stefano narrows his eyes in utter disbelief, slowly piecing together the undeniable truth of the situation. Standing frozen in place, Lord Caffrey can only stare as his undeniable affection for Lady Rochette is laid bare. Stepping closer, Stefano corners the visibly flustered nobleman to press the inescapable romantic issue. A heavy, suffocating silence stretches between the two rivals as unspoken truths hang in the air. Stefano maintains his piercing gaze, scrutinizing the nervous Caffrey for any sign of a denial. Deflating slightly, Stefano releases a heavy sigh as the rivalry becomes painfully clear. Sensing the underlying tension, Caffrey solemnly tells Stefano that he understands without another word being spoken. Smirking knowingly, Stefano points out that Caffrey's deep affection for Lady Rashette is plainly written all over his face. Exasperated by his friend's absolute blindness, Stefano mutters a good grief at Caffrey's utter lack of self-awareness. Stretching his arms back casually, Stefano gracefully concedes the battle and decides it is fine to let this one go. Walking away with a wave, Stefano announces he will step back this time, though Caffrey desperately calls after him. Left entirely alone, Lord Caffrey steadies his resolve as a newfound determination solidifies in his blushing expression. Wandering away, Stefano privately admits his own lingering interest in her while offering a silent thanks. Sunlight bathes the bustling, picturesque town square as citizens go about their lively daily routines. Marveling at the vibrant atmosphere, Lady Rashette happily explores the market while her nervous guard begs her to be careful. Blushing furiously, Rashette freezes as her maid eagerly points out that the handsome Lord Caffrey is nearby. Defending her curiosity against Eric's teasing, she stubbornly insists she isn't a child despite rushing toward the stalls. Reluctant to approach yet completely mesmerized, Caffrey nervously watches the eye-catching lady from a distance. Spotting him immediately, Rashette offers a warm greeting while Caffrey realizes he was found entirely too quickly. Approaching her side, Caffrey remarks that she is easy to find because she stands out beautifully in the crowded market. Puzzled by his blunt delivery, Rashette leans in and innocently questions if his words were meant as an insult. Panicking instantly, Caffrey stammers a frantic denial and quickly clarifies that he meant she is stunningly radiant. Internally swooning over his unintentionally aggressive charm, she marvels at his perfect romanceable character traits. Caffrey asks if she wants to walk the stalls, revealing he already secured the limited items from Blanche just for her. Overjoyed by his incredibly thoughtful gesture, Rashette beams brightly and eagerly accepts his invitation. Gesturing gracefully toward the busy marketplace, Caffrey notes that she had been excitedly looking around earlier. Thrilled to realize he had been watching her so closely, she listens as he offers to show her whatever caught her eye. Asking her to accompany him for a stroll, Caffrey smiles warmly as Rashette answers with absolute pleasure. Together they admire a quaint stall brimming with woven baskets, carved wooden horses, and fragrant lavender bundles. Caffrey lingers respectfully behind her as Rashette gazes with wide-eyed wonder at an array of sparkling jewelry. Rashette animatedly points out her favorite clay pots while Caffrey watches her enthusiasm with a fond, silent gaze. Gently guiding her through the bustling crowd, he calls out to Lady Rashette to ensure she stays close by his side. Hovering protectively near her, Caffrey asks if she is enjoying herself and warns her to be careful in the throng. Flashing a brilliant, heartwarming smile, Rashette happily declares that she is enjoying the outing very much. Turning the thoughtful question back on him, Rashette softly asks if Lord Caffrey is also having a wonderful time. Caffrey stares at her in stunned silence, completely captivated by her radiant beauty amidst the festive flowers. Watching a neighboring couple playfully banter, they hear a man vow that he never gets tired of watching his partner. Spotting a nearby target board, Caffrey immediately suggests they test their skills at the lively dart stall. Rashette steps up confidently to the line, gripping a feathered dart tightly as a small crowd gathers to watch her throw. Eager to play, she confidently declares she will give it a try since she always enjoyed minigames in her Otome games. With a swift flick of her wrist, she launches the dart toward the target as Caffrey watches her form intently. Accepting as sweet as a consolation prize, she pouts about missing the center while Caffrey kindly praises her effort. Her glittering eyes lock onto a massive, adorable teddy bear sitting tantalizingly out of her immediate reach. Sensing her deep desire for the plush prize, Caffrey steps forward with a determined smirk and tells her to leave it to him. Striking with absolute precision, the feathered dart slams dead center into the target board with a resounding thud. Holding up a highly coveted black bunny plush, Lord Caffrey smoothly praises his own perfect bullseye as Lady Rashette stares in utter awe. Offering the adorable prize directly to her, Caffrey gently notes that there is absolutely no use for him to keep such a toy. Clutching the dark plush tightly against her chest, Rashette internally marvels at the incredible, undeniable luck of romanceable characters. Blushing with genuine delight, she gratefully accepts the unexpected gift while softly cooing over its undeniable cuteness. Her protective guard and loyal maid look on in utter shock as Rashette squeezes the plushie in pure, unadulterated joy. Shifting to a more serene atmosphere, a beautifully crafted fruit parfait sits elegantly on a sunlit terrace table. Relaxing in the bustling cafe, Rashette happily admits she never imagined spending such a wonderfully festive day like this. Gripping her teacup tightly, she steals a nervous glance at the handsome nobleman, still struggling to believe she is leisurely sitting with Lord Caffrey. A moment of quiet, heavy intimacy settles between them as Caffrey gracefully averts his gaze, his cheeks dusted with a soft, revealing blush. Bowing her head in deep regret, Rashette earnestly apologizes for completely misunderstanding his previous intentions and missing the mark entirely. Panicking internally over her past villainous actions, she wildly waves her hands and begs him not to apologize for her own glaring mistakes. A strange, suffocating warmth blooms in her chest as she struggles to process these highly unfamiliar and deeply confusing emotions. Breaking the delicate silence, Caffrey leans in and gently asks if Lady Rashette would mind staying by his side just a little longer. The sun slowly begins to set, casting a magnificent, sweeping golden glow over the grand balcony overlooking the vibrant town. Mesmerized by the sparkling twilight reflecting off the water, she absent-mindedly whispers how breathtakingly beautiful the scenery is. Standing peacefully side by side on the elegant terrace, they quietly gaze out over the sprawling, twilight-draped rooftops. Turning his profound gaze toward the horizon, Caffrey notes that they have secured the perfect vantage point to watch the upcoming fireworks. Her eyes shining with pure childlike wonder, Rashette turns to him and admits she never knew such a magical, hidden place existed. Changing the subject with a soft, probing inquiry, Caffrey asks if she is also quite close with her own sibling. He explains that he discovered this secluded balcony purely by chance while wandering the bustling city with his own brother. Flashing back to chaotic, lively memories of shopping and dining with her wildly energetic brother, Rashette softly agrees that they are indeed close. Resting her hands gracefully on the stone balustrade, she smiles fondly while admitting that despite his fiercely overprotective nature, her brother is deeply kind. Rashette earnestly apologizes for her brother's harsh intervention during their past training, but Caffrey dismisses the memory smoothly. Stunned silence falls over her as Caffrey intensely confesses that he was genuinely terrified and worried about her when she disappeared in the forest. Locking his piercing, unwavering eyes with hers, Caffrey asks if it is really so strange that he would worry about her well-being. Rashette silently reflects on how surprisingly natural and entirely comfortable it felt to spend this entire festive day together. Vivid memories of him bravely defending her from harassment and quietly sharing sweet moments flood her rapidly racing mind. She privately realizes that being with him is truly enjoyable just as Caffrey urgently speaks her name to pull her back to reality. A sudden image of her dear, cherished friends flashes in her mind, anchoring her completely oblivious heart to a safe, familiar concept. Beaming with blinding, innocent cheer, she confidently declares that his worry isn't strange at all because of their specific, undeniable bond. Like a devastating lightning bolt entirely shattering the romantic tension, she happily and loudly proclaims that they are simply friends. Brilliant fireworks suddenly explode in the night sky as an awkward, heavy silence makes her nervously wonder if she was entirely mistaken. Stepping purposefully closer through the illuminated darkness, Caffrey calls her name with a deep, uncompromising seriousness. He firmly acknowledges that while they can indeed start as friends, his true feelings run significantly deeper than mere companionship. Stripping away all polite pretenses, he passionately confesses that he desperately wanted to protect her more than anyone else in the world. Absolutely refusing to be permanently relegated to the friend zone, Caffrey boldly declares his burning desire to be someone truly special to her. Trembling under his intense, purely romantic gaze, she breathlessly repeats the word, special, as he softly asks if such a reality is impossible. Her heart pounds a frantic, deafening rhythm against her ribs as she stammers in sheer shock, slowly grasping the undeniable weight of his words. Delivering the ultimate, breathtaking confession under the exploding fireworks, Caffrey asks her to deeply consider their future before plainly stating that he likes her. Looking down with a heavy expression, Lord Caffrey softly acknowledges her painful apology before trailing off into a lingering silence. Gripping her chest tightly, Lady Rashette firmly apologizes beneath the dazzling glow of the fading fireworks. Eager to live freely after abandoning her fiancé candidacy, Rashette politely explains she refuses to let her feelings drift toward romance. Meeting her firm rejection with a gentle gaze, The handsome nobleman remains completely silent as a soft blush graces his cheeks. Refusing to back down so easily, Caffrey confidently declares he will never stop pursuing her. Lady Rochette stares back with wide, unblinking eyes, utterly stunned by his sudden and unwavering romantic declaration. Her mind spirals into sheer panic as she instantly recalls a teasing rumor about her distinct preference for being intensely pursued. Desperately deflecting the overwhelming romantic tension, Rochette notes the fireworks are over as Caffrey politely offers to escort her to her carriage. Staring at the waiting carriage under the night sky, she sweats nervously while mentally screaming that her once simple life is becoming dangerously complicated. Bright morning sunlight floods the grand, arched courtyard of the magnificent academy as a brand new school day officially begins. Excited female students swarm the hallways, buzzing with the explosive rumor that Lady Alexia has officially abandoned her prestigious fiancé candidacy. Flashing a brilliantly carefree smile, Lady Alexia happily confirms the gossip and announces her thrilling plan to live completely freely. Walking down the corridor with a heavy sigh, Lady Rochette notes just how dangerously fast the Academy's rumor mill operates. Peeking cautiously around the corner, a flustered Rochette stealthily observes the chaotic social situation unfolding before her very eyes. A heavy sense of dread washes over Rochette as she overhears someone brazenly repeating her secret romantic preferences out loud. The gossiping girls suddenly shift their intense, probing attention toward a thoroughly panicked student named Ian. Gasping in sheer terror, Rochette and her friends freeze in place as a completely unexpected scandal erupts right in front of them. Trembling with uncontrollable excitement, Ariana desperately confirms the shocking sight while her friend demands all the juicy details. The Academy girls frantically scream Lady Alexia's name as absolute pandemonium breaks loose in the normally quiet hallway. Caught in the center of the suffocating drama, a dizzy and disoriented Rochette struggles to process the mounting chaos. Emerging smoothly from the frantic crowd, the charming Lord Caffrey answers his name with a devastatingly handsome smile. Blushing furiously at his sudden appearance, an overwhelmed Rochette internally screams over his incredibly unfair level of attractiveness. Refusing to succumb to his overwhelming charm, the flustered Villainess violently spins around to initiate a frantic retreat. Sprinting desperately down the stone corridor, Rochette and her bewildered friends attempt to outrun the relentless tide of Academy gossip. Pausing by a grand window, a mysterious figure sharply questions the true motives behind Lady Alexia canceling her engagement. Narrowing his sharp eyes, the blonde nobleman intensely asks the fleeing girl if she is genuinely certain about throwing her future away. Stomping her heeled shoe with absolute resolve, the fierce young woman fiercely declares her intention to enjoy her new life. Proudly embracing her villainous role, she completely rejects excessive romance and boldly dashes away as her loyal friends desperately chase after her. Slumping in a secluded corner, an exhausted Rochette clutches a smug black cat that cruelly mocks her incredibly loud, racing heartbeat. Furiously squabbling with her magical feline companion, she angrily denies putting on a sweet expression just to survive the romantic encounter. Freezing in absolute horror, Rochette slowly turns around as a bewildered Lord Caffrey demands to know if her pet cat just spoke.